fights with passion, and he inspires.
Are you ready for a war?
All right, welcome back to From 8 Arbitration. Miss Mallory Sutton. Miss Mallory Sutton, thank you for the work you did on the website, from8arbitration.com. Last week I told y'all that Jeremy McCall had kind of revamped the website. And as soon as the episode came out, it wasn't 2 seconds. Jeremy messaged me and he said, hey, it wasn't me. Miss Mallory Sutton off of Discord did that. She's put a lot of work in, and you need to make sure you correct that. And so I said, yes, sir, I will. And so I did not know, and I apologize. Jeremy had messaged saying, hey, the website has got a different look, and a lot of changes have been done to it. He didn't say that he did it. I just took for granted because he had been doing it, but it was not. It was Miss Mallory Sutton. I believe both of them together were working on it, but he said a lot of the work was done by her. So I apologize to you, Miss Sutton. I did not know that, and I apologize for leaving you out. You didn't reach out to me and tell me, and but a lot of people from Discord did. They said, hey, you left her out. So Miss Mallory Sutton, I apologize. Seriously, I apologize for that. Thank you so much for the work on that website. I wish y'all knew how many people had reached out about the website, how much it's helping them when they try to build case files, downloading things off of there to help. It's been as important as anything from 8 Arbitration, that website, okay? And it's helped so many people out across this country. And so, Mallory, a lot of that is because of you, and I appreciate you very much, and thank you. And so I do apologize for that. I did not mean to slight you, and Jeremy jumped on me immediately when the episode came out. So I said, I will correct that, I promise you. So thank you, though, Miss Sutton. I appreciate that. So, Mallory Sutton, thank you. I wanted to start this episode off with that, and so thank you. Last week, went to New York, went to Brooklyn. My very first time going to New York, and had a ball. And Branch 41 in Brooklyn invited me to come and speak, and that's what I did, and traveled all of New York. I did everything that I wanted to do. Got a hot dog from Coney Island, which was fantastic. Loved Coney Island. That took me back. I love the Warriors, the movie The Warriors, and that took me back. And it's huge, a lot bigger than I thought it was going to be. Got pizza. The Union Hall provided pizza from a local pizza joint. It was amazing. Went out to eat with the President, John Cruz, in Little Italy, to La Nana, I believe it's called. And John Cruz is a stud of a president. Let me tell you, that guy is an absolute beast as a president and loves his people. And that dude loves his members, man, and it is encouraging to see. And so we went out to eat. Richie Ray went with us. Mr. Luther McCoy went with us, and also had a Mr. Garrison Lang. He drove in to eat with us, and he's the president of Garden State Merge Branch 444. And he came in and ate with us as well. Had a good picture of that I put up on Facebook of us eating at La Nana in Little Italy, and that was really special to me. Had a lot of great conversations, some very strong individuals for the union. In that picture, and I was honored to be there. I may have Mr. Lang on before too long, because he was completely screwed over by Renfroe. And when they went to S&DCs, Renfroe had a memo out about the gaining installation in those S&DCs and completely flipped that on Mr. Lang to benefit a larger branch so he could get those votes. It was strictly politics. And as a branch president in a huge branch, I would not do that to a smaller branch. I understand the politics of it, but if anything was going to happen where I was going to screw a smaller branch, I just wouldn't do it. I would not do that. Ethics and integrity have to come into play, but they completely screwed over Branch 444, a smaller branch. Renfroe did, and it's sickening. Just for votes, and that's the only reason that was done. But anyway, I may have him on. He's hot. He's mad, and so And he let that be known when he came in. But it was a pleasure to meet him, a great individual. But I really had a blast, man. Branch 41 treated me so well. And we had a dadgum good time. And so hopefully they enjoyed having me. But I love the pizza. I know that. That was good stuff. But we had a good time, Branch 41 in Brooklyn. Next week, Mr. Mike Caref's going to be on. All right? He's going to answer questions just like Mr. Renfroe did, just like Mr. Noble did. Mr. Caref will be on, and he's going to answer questions. Now, if you get on Discord, they'll have a place for you to ask those questions, and I'll get them off just like I did Mr. Noble. If you get on Reddit from ADA Arbitration, the Reddit page, there'll be a place for you to ask questions there. Tomorrow, I'm going to have something on from ADA Arbitration, the Facebook page, where you can ask questions. Have them there. You can message me questions, email me questions, and whatever you send me, I'm going to ask him. The good, the bad, the ugly, all right? And he's going to answer them just like Mr. Noble did, just like Renfroe did. So reached out to him today, or yesterday, I think. And he said he's still on for that. So next week, Mr. Mike Caref, who's thrown his hat into the ring to be the next president of the NALC, he'll be on, all right? Mr. James Henry, he will be on after the convention, and we both kind of mutually agreed to that. I've got 4 arbitrations coming up. Got one this month on the 25th, and then 3 in July. Now, when I have these things, I shut down for the week. If anybody knows me, for that week, I generally shut down because I deliver mail till 5 or 6. I'll get home, and I'll start working on cases because I do not want to be out-prepared. I don't want management to ever out-prepare me, and that's never happened before, and it never will. And that's because I shut it down and get into that case file as an advocate. So we agreed that after the convention, Mr. Henry will come on. Mr. Noble Part 2 will be after the convention as well, all right? So we'll have Mr. Noble, Mr. Henry after the convention, Mr. Caref next Sunday, all right? And all of them are going to answer questions, right? So that'll be good. That's good stuff. I had an individual reach out to me that took exception with some things that Noble said. This individual is kind of at the national level, and he said that Mr. Noble was not being truthful on some certain things. So I told them to come on. I don't take your word for it. Come on here and tell the people, you know. I'm just a city letter carrier on a podcast. I don't mean a whole lot, but if you want to listen and you want to criticize, come on here and let it be heard, right? So I put out that invitation. So we'll see. We'll see. But I know that Mr. Noble sent things for me to put up on FromAdaArbitration.com on the episode to prove his positions on some things, and so we'll see where it goes. I'm going to read, this episode is going to be very long. I'm going to read the panel report that was based off of the Weir report, where the charges, Mr. Vafiedes talked about it last week, about the panel report, had some other things he talked about. I'm going to read the panel report, 23 pages, all right? And y'all know how I feel about reading, but the day after Mr. Vafiedes came on here, National put out the reports, and they were redacted. I'm going to read the unredacted report today. Also, I'm going to read Mr. Chris Jackson's rebuttal to the report, okay, because he had a rebuttal to it, took exceptions to some things. I'm also going to play an audio clip of a business agent a week before going to vote on the charges. And the reason I'm going to do this is I'm going to show you that the fix was in. And I think that it's disheartening at best what happened with the charges. I don't think that people went in with an open mind to say, we're going to put the city letter carrier first. Titles be damned. We're going to put the city letter carrier first in everything that we do. We're going to look at what we have in front of us. We're going to base our decisions based on what's in front of us, and that did not happen. And this audio clip is a perfect example. This business agent is disparaging towards Mr. Weir, who is as neutral as it gets, and kind of belittles his report. Also made some falsehoods, and I'll talk about that before I read it, okay? He told his members in this kind of session that they were in, he was dishonest. Now, I don't know if he meant to be dishonest, if he understood it to be a certain way, and it wasn't, but he based his decision off of dishonesty, and he told us things that were dishonest. And so I'm going to play that audio. Look, I'm going to lose some people today. I'm going to lose some friends today. I'm going to lose some listeners today. I'm going to make some people highly upset with me today. I do not care. I just don't fucking care. I am sick of the way that my union is going. I'm sick and tired of it. I started this podcast a few years ago out of my love for the city letter carrier. I don't do this for any other reason. Damn sure don't do it to get rich. I don't make any money. I make no money off of this and never will. But I do it because I wanted to educate my people on the floor. I did not want them taken advantage of by management who I despise. I want to educate all members, every city letter carrier. I want to educate them. I took a great deal of time to educate myself when I started, and have learned some things along the way, some way to do things, different ways to do things. And I'm just trying to tell y'all what I know. I'm nothing special, but I have dealt with a lot of things, and so I just want to help as much as I can. As time has gone on, and we talked about this before, I realized that management's not all the problem. A lot of the problems is my union and their inability to love us. And I know that because if you love us, you will fight tooth and nail for us. And we lack love in our leadership, love for our union, right? I can tell any group I ever talk to, I love them. I tell my carriers all the time that I love them. It's because I do. With everything in me, I love the city letter carrier craft. Wherever I go, I make sure that those people know that I love them. And I will do whatever it takes to fight for them. And all of my episodes lately have been about fighting and picking up the flag and fighting, building up warriors, and trying to convince my union to do that's our job. But you will never hear your leaders tell you that they love you. And I think that that's important. I just do. Some people don't. That's fine. But if you ever watched Happy Days, I loved watching Happy Days. When I was growing up, it was one of the, you had every night had those shows that you watched. Happy Days was one of my favorites. But if you remember the Fonz, Arthur Fonzarelli, remember when he would try to tell somebody he loved them? and he'd be like, he couldn't say it. It'd be like, you just tell me you love me. I do. That's our leadership. They can't fucking say it because they don't. They're in it for themselves. And that's the reason that our union has gone to shit. It's because it has a new regime has kind of taken over, and it's strictly for themselves. These charges, to me, are a perfect example of that. This executive council, the way they bitched out on it. And I do appreciate Mr. Vafietis coming on last week and telling y'all his position. And I disagree with it. And I'm going to read these reports. I'm going to let you hear an audio tape about these charges, and I'm going to prove my point today. Okay? But if you don't love me, this is what you get. Our union today is what you get when you do not love the city letter carrier craft. If you want to see hellraisers, get those that, I've always said this, love the city letter carrier and put the city letter carrier first. If you want to see hellraisers, do that. Everything else is going to take care of itself. Everything will take care of itself. You never have to worry about a thing if you love the city letter carrier, right? Education is going to take care of itself. Because if you love me, and if you love your brothers and sisters, you're going to make sure that you're educated to defend them. You're going to make sure that you do everything humanly possible to defend them. If you're a shepherd or a sheep herder, is based off of if you love us or not. If you love me, you're going to be a shepherd. If you do not, you're going to be a sheep herder. You're going to lead from the back, like Renfroe does. And he's proven that over and over again with the hip training and the stationary events and all these things. And his sheer dishonesty. I've never met an individual more dishonest than him. Like I said, I worked at the jail for 6 years, and I trust those inmates more than I do him. He can't tell the truth, and that's sad because he could have had a good career, but his career is over in 2 years. He will not make it, and he will not be the president again, and that's just something that's going to happen. But if you love us, if you love the city letter carrier, everything else will take care of itself. Everything else will take care of itself. And you'll see in this reports, you'll see in the panel's reports, the executive council, you'll see that rear its ugly head. You know, they don't love us, and that's what that proved. But I'd like to get back to doing what I was doing, to educate. That's what I love doing. And like I said, it's kind of taken a different path the more I've gotten into it, and seen that it's that my union's mainly to fault for the things that are going on today. I think you look at Barner, how he's being pimped out by labor right now. It's a lack of love, and it shows cowardice, and I think that that's hurt us greatly. I think that you look at Renfroe, how he is pimped out by the Postmaster General, how he has given in to so many things. You know, TRAP is dead, but now these things are still in place that he put on those memos. They have raked him over the coals on this and have taken advantage of his ignorance as far as the city letter carrier craft. Smart dude, man. Dude is smart as hell. But his knowledge about our craft is minimal at best, and they took advantage of him on these memos, and we're reaping the benefits of that because they're destroying us, man. They are waylaying us right now because of his ignorance, and so that's kind of where my podcast has gone, and I don't like it. I really don't. I want it to get back to educating, but I would feel like I'd be doing a disservice to the people that I love if I didn't say my opinion, if I didn't to bring things to y'all that people send me that is going on with National. I feel like I'd be doing a disservice to y'all if I just came on here and said, hey, whatever happens up there happens. You know, keep filing grievances. And I just can't do it. I can't do it. I know a lot of people reach out, say, hey, man, you kind of lost us, you know, when you started doing that. I meet people and say, hey, we used to tell people to listen to you. We don't anymore because you cuss too much. You're not educating anymore. You've gotten on to personal attacks, and you've gotten on to attacking our leaders and the executive council and MBAs, and you know, you've gotten to where it's kind of a smear campaign on different people and all this. And I understand it, and I don't give a shit. I just don't. And that's just me, you know. Maybe that's bad, you know, but I don't care. I just don't, because I love the city letter carrier too much to see us go down this path. And so, anyway, saying all that to say, I know that this podcast is kind of taking a turn, and hopefully one day it'll get back to where it should be, educating. But until my union starts to love us, I'm going to get on here and rail on them. I'm just going to do that. Okay. Back in episodes 50 and 63, I talk about grieving unsafe scanner messages, if y'all remember. And I talk about these scanner messages that they're sending back out now, talking about use authorized brakes to beat the heat. And people sent me these all week long about that. We've got to grieve those things. And when I believe that we grieve everything. I just do. Anything that they do, I want to grieve it. And that's just how I am. I want to grieve everything. And the management is using these scanners now for means of intimidation and harassment. And I would like to see my union come out with something about that. Yeah, I would like to see the business agents come out with something about that. I would like to see my president come out with something about that. Management using the scanners to harass the city letter carriers. And that's so much of that's going on. I'm going to read some things that were sent to me just this week. How management is abusing the city letter carrier and harassing the city letter carrier with the scanners. And I would like to see my president, somebody from somewhere, do something about these things and put an end to all this shit that's going on. I'll just read you a handful of them. I'll just start reading them. Here's one that's sent to Hannah will be closing tonight, not Adam. Remember, there is no reason for 1900s, and they will not be tolerated. This will be the last message about contacting by 1500. We are professionals, CTK. I'll read that again. Hannah will be closing tonight, not Adam. Remember, there is no reason for 1900s, and they will not be tolerated. Now, some people may not care. Some people look at that and laugh at it. This is what pisses me off. I'm a city letter carrier, all right? And I come to work and I do the best that I can every day. Some days are good. Some days not so good. Some days I get finished with my route fairly early. And some days it just takes me all damn day. And there's no rhyme or reason for it. Y'all know what I'm talking about. I can have 10 feet of mail one day and I can get done in 8. I can have 10 feet of mail one day and get done in 10 and a half hours. It's just the way it is. It's the way it flows. And some days it feels like I've been out there for 3 weeks. And some days I get something on my mind and I'll be done. I'll be like, damn, where'd the day go? That's just how it is. Management is not better than me. And when they send out messages like that, it makes me feel like I am a third-rate citizen, like I am less than human, like I'm out here fucking off, like they are disparaging me. You're not better than me. Matter of fact, you don't do shit all day long. You don't do anything compared to what I do as a city letter carrier. Nobody does. Nobody works as hard as a city letter carrier. Nobody. Damn sure ain't management. They're worthless. And they do nothing all day long except take orders from their bosses and do Zoom meetings. So this is how I look at this, and this is how I'll always look at this when you say, Hannah will be closing tonight, not Adam. Remember, there is no reason for 1900s. You're talking down to me. And they will not be tolerated. You're belittling me when you do that. That's not what I come to work for. I don't come to work for that. Right? You're going to treat me with respect that I deserve by coming into work. Every day I come in, I deserve to be respected. Right? You don't owe me anything, but I deserve to be respected. Any message that I see that puts me in a different category, that makes it appear that I'm being disrespected, I'm going to grieve it. And I hope that makes sense. I come and do the best I can. That's all I can guarantee you. I come and do the best I can. I don't deserve to look down and say, remember, there is no reason for 1900s. There might be a reason for 1900. Something may happen, and they will not be tolerated. So now I have a zero tolerance policy that they're trying to put on me. If you're saying they will not be tolerated, or what? You're threatening me. They'll not be tolerated. So now I got a zero tolerance policy. So if I was put in an information request, I'd say, I need the zero tolerance policy on 1900s. Where's that at? Any email dealing with 1900s. Any contractual provision that talks about 1900s. I need the zero tolerance policy today. It won't be tolerated means there's a zero tolerance of that. Okay? Anytime you get these messages, stewards, dissect that message and see what we can do. They shouldn't be putting this out anyway. I've got a process that I go by. It's called a reporting requirement. It's in the M41. All right? If I need overtime, I'm going to put in a 3996, and that's going to be approved or disapproved, and then we'll see what we're going to do from there. I have a reporting requirement. What you're trying to do is circumvent that reporting requirement when you send out these messages. So I'm going to say that management is attempting to circumvent my reporting requirement as outlined in the M41 when they do this, because I tell them how much overtime I'm going to need, and they can approve it or disapprove it and tell me what to do with the mail after that. When you send these out, what you're telling me is, fuck the M41 and your reporting requirement. We're going to intimidate you into coming back. You're circumventing my reporting requirement when you send these messages out. Anytime somebody sends me a message, I'm looking at it and I'm going to say, what are they trying to say? And how can I shove it up their ass? That's what I'm trying to do. And that's what I would do with that one. Okay? Here's another. This is terrible. Are you even trying to ever finish your route, Mr. Dobson? Okay. This is what I'm talking about. Anybody can come into management now. Anybody can be a supervisor manager. You don't even have to have a first grade education to be in management, to be in supervision. Here's this. Listen to this again. Are you even trying to ever finish your route, Mr. Dobson? What makes you think it's okay to always bring the mail back? So this man's being investigated on the scanner. I would send back one message, and y'all know what it is. We talk about it all the time. What's the message you would send back? It's just one word. Steward. That's what I would send back. Steward. But here I read it again, and it's hard for me to read because it's so terrible. Are you even trying to ever finish your route, Mr. Dobson? What are you talking about? And stewards, look, get a hold of this. I'm attacking these all the time, man. I just am. I'm not going to tolerate it. Are you even trying to ever finish your route, Mr. Dobson? What are you talking about when you say that? Well, I'm looking on here. Because of y'all's president, they're able to do this. Freely. At will. It's an inconvenience, but it's good for packages. I know that it's uncomfortable. It's because he's never had this done to him. He never worried about this happening to him. But he has given management the green light to do it. Look here. Fuck him. Grieve all of these things. Grieve them. Okay? So are you even trying to ever finish your route, Mr. Dobson? Shop steward, I'd go in there and say, what are you talking about? What are you talking about here? Well, I'm looking on the breadcrumbs, and I'm saying, so you're spying on him, and you're questioning him off of these covert techniques. I'd file a grievance. I don't know whether your business agent would do anything about it, because most of them are in bed with Renfroe, and they will kiss his ass all day long. But I would grieve it under Section 134 of the M39 Handbook. And under 115.4 of the M39 Handbook, because you're treating me disrespectfully when you say that. That's being disrespectful to me when you send that out over the scanner. Because what you're doing is, I'm out here giving my best effort. 8 hours work for 8 hours pay. I'm doing the best that I can. You don't have any paperwork showing anything other than that. I'm doing the best that I can out here, and you are disparaging me by what you're saying. Are you even trying to ever finish your route, Mr. Dobson? What are you talking about? Where did you get that from? And here's this grievance. Okay? What makes you think it's okay to always bring mail back? They're setting your man up, shop steward. Deal with that. Deal with that. They're trying to set your guy up. Bring mail back. All right? We can get disciplined for that. And Mr. Dobson, I don't know who you are. One word, steward. That's the only thing I'd send back, steward. And when you get back, get a steward. Right? So there's another one for y'all. And as I say, business agents should send out templates on these scanner messages. I have 2 of them, episode 50 and 63 on the unsafe scanner messages. There's templates on both of those things where I grieved this before. And a lot of people have grieved these things and have won. And a lot of people sent me the ones I'm fixing to read to you about the unsafe scanner messages. I put templates out all the time for you. Even if your business agents don't. I'm going to do that. And so, but business agents, get some great minds together and deal with these scanner messages like this, these bullying scanner messages that are humiliating and degrading. To me, it's a violation of 115.4. You can call me into the office when I get back if you have to investigate me. But doing these things on the street is inappropriate. All right? Here it is. And about 20 people sent me these last week. Utilize authorized breaks to relax from high heat conditions. Utilize authorized breaks to relax from high heat conditions. Now, again, episode 50 and 63, I talk about grieving unsafe scanner messages. And why do I do that? CCAs come in here, right, and they're doing everything they can for 90 days to hang on if they want this job. Now, some CCAs don't care. But there are those that come in here and they really want this job, even though you have fast food wages and no protection, which is crazy as shit to me. They have no protection and they make fast food wages. But they really want this job because they see the big picture. They're going to make a pretty good wage one day, decent retirement, and some good benefits, right? And they come in and for 90 days, you heard last week where they're telling some in these initiations of their training that you have to do an hour office time, 90-minute geofence and all these things. So they're already telling these CCAs things that are incorrect, okay? It's hot right now. It's deadly hot. No matter of fact, in Nashville next week, it's going to be, the high is going to be 96 here, which is hot for us. And I know Arizona, y'all are probably laughing at that, or other places you are giggling at 96. It is hot for us here, 96. That's hot. June still. Heat index will be well into the hundreds. The last thing the CCAs need to see is a message like this saying take authorized breaks. Because I get 2 10-minute breaks. Some of them may take one in the morning, or they could take 2 of them on the street, and a 30-minute lunch. All right? So if I take my 30-minute lunch, I'll be out of the heat unless they eat in their vehicle, which is hot. I get a 10-minute break that I can rest and try to do something to get out of this vehicle, which is 120 degrees. Right? Sit in some shade, get in some air conditioning. I get 2 of those. Those are authorized, right? That is the perception that these CCAs get. It is the perception that carriers that are not educated on this get. My 2 10-minute breaks. That is a deadly message, and I talk about that all the time. That message is deadly. We take breaks as needed in the heat. In all these episodes, I talk about this, but here it is, summer again. This year, more than ever, in our history, be careful. Protect your CCAs. Educate every carrier in your station. Take breaks as needed in this heat. Why is that more important this year more than ever? Stationary events, inactivity time. They will be coming down on us like never before this year, this summer, because they've been given free rein from this dumbass president of ours as far as these stationary events. Now, I know that there are some business agents that are in their asses. I told you about Eddie Davidson, the email, talking about these things. There are some business agents that will not give in to Renfroe's bitch ass, and they will fight this. You got a president who refused to stand up for Mr. Gates in the hip training, even after Mr. Gates passed away and found out that management had lied on him and told the media that he had received hip training. He refused to say anything about it because he's too scared to upset management. He refuses to take a stand on stationary events, on the scanners, talking about packages. That has nothing to do with anything. He refuses to protect the city letter carrier. Business agents, get out of his ass and protect your people. Protect your people. Make sure they're grieving these unsafe scanner messages. Give them a template to do that. Make sure that every carrier is educated to take breaks as needed in this heat. And fire management's ass up if they start bringing them in the office, talking to them about why are you taking all these breaks out there in this heat. They're going to try to intimidate us more than ever before because they're making a killing on stationary events. All $1 million programs are starting to come out because of stationary events. And I'll read something to you here in a second that some people have sent me. They're hiring people specifically to watch us on stationary events. That's how much money they are saving on stationary events. Way back when, I told you about that dumbass AVP talking about the metrics, our office time, stationary events. They are making a killing on us on stationary events, and our president is complacent. He refuses to engage that fight. Business agents, listen, I understand. You're in bed with Renfroe. I get it. A lot of y'all are in bed with Renfroe because you're scared of your position. Anybody who backs Renfroe on the executive council is going to be gone. It's already done. And I'm sorry to say that. Any business agents who back Renfroe and are going to be on his ticket are going to lose your positions. That is done, folks. It's happening. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, there's nothing they can do about it. They're going to be replaced. Renfroe is losing this next election. Anybody on his ticket is losing. It's just happening. Business agents, look, whatever your love affair with Renfroe is, protect your carriers. Protect your carriers. We are fixing to get into the deadliest time in our history because of management coming after our CCAs and all of us over stationary events and activity reports. Okay? They're going to try to cut down on our take breaks as needed in the heat. I promise you that. We have to be more militant this summer than we've ever been in our lives. There should be thousands upon thousands of grievances being filed on management this summer. We should be asking for management's jobs this summer. When you had Mr. Gates, when he passed away, what were they saying on the scanner messages? Keep it moving. Keep it moving. It's hot outside. Keep it moving. Beat the heat. Keep it moving. It wasn't make sure you take breaks as needed. Make sure you take breaks as needed in this heat. It was keep it moving. That is their message to us. Business agents, please, I implore you, protect your city letter carriers during the summer. Management will be coming after us like never before on these stationary events because they are making an absolute killing on it. This podcast is specifically for city letter carriers. It's not for anybody else. Now, I've got rural carriers that listen, and some of them are going to be on here before too long that are going to challenge their president. I have clerks that listen. UPS listens. Army Corps of Engineers listens. Matter of fact, they're coming down to talk to me in a couple of weeks. They're going to Chattanooga to talk to the TVA. And we're going to do some kind of collaboration. Other unions listen. This podcast is for city letter carriers. It's not for business agents. It's not for the executive council, even though they listen, right? It's for city letter carriers and how to protect my brothers and sisters. That's what this podcast is for. Business agents, I know you listen. I know you do for a fact. Get yourself away from Renfroe. Get yourself away from that loser. All right? And protect us. I know his position on stationary events and the scanners watching us with his scanner. He has allowed us to be tracked. No other president in history has ever allowed that. He has allowed us to be tracked and monitored. That alone should make y'all distance yourself from that piece of shit. What he's done to us as far as that's concerned. Get templates ready now. Get templates ready now to protect your people. Beat these safe, unsafe scanner messages. Get templates ready for that. You can use mine, episode 50 and 63. I don't care if you steal it. I don't care. You can ask me for it. I'll send it to you. Even if you hate me, I don't care. Protect my people. Get your stewards ready for when they call them in there about these stationary events, especially in the heat. Get us ready. Make sure that the carriers have something in hand to understand take breaks as needed in this heat. Whether you got to email the branch presidents, these are flyers to give out to every single carrier. These are answers that you're going to have for questions that they give to you. These are things that you're going to need for the heat to beat the heat. This is how you're going to address take breaks as needed in the heat. These are the memos that you're going to need that are going to support your position, take breaks as needed in the heat. These are the mandatory stand-up talks that you're going to need, take breaks as needed in the heat. Make sure that your CCAs understand that they need to get a cooler, not a bottle of water put in the freezer, a cooler with ice and drinks, sports drinks. Make sure that your CCAs are prepared for this heat. A lot of them have never worked in it. There's a difference between playing in it and working in it, okay? Riding in that vehicle all day that's 120 degrees. Get your people ready. Make sure that your CCAs are prepared for this heat. And stewards, be pit bulls in there in that office for them. Do not tolerate anything that supervision does as far as why are you out there all these breaks? Why are you taking all these breaks? You took 5 breaks yesterday. You know what? Make sure we're grieving these things. I would grieve them in spite of our dumbass president, okay? That took a little bit too long right there, but that's something that bothers me, especially with these stationary events, and y'all know what I'm talking about. Here's another one. Carriers, remember, you all have 30 minutes extra to meet your 8-hour day. If you have overtime, 30 minutes of that is under. All ODTL must be back and off the clock by 8 p.m. No exceptions. Thanks. So here we go. Carriers, remember, you all have 30 minutes extra to meet your 8-hour day. Where are they getting that from? Shop stewards? I take it in there. Where are you getting that from? All of us. Carriers, remember, you all, the entire station has 30 minutes extra to meet your 8-hour day. If you have overtime, 30 minutes of that is undertime. Where are they getting that from? DOAS and PET. I would request, where are you getting that from? That's from your volume. I didn't ask you that. Where are you getting it? All of us have 30 minutes. What are you looking at that tells you all of us have 30 minutes? Because that's what the message says. All of you have 30 minutes undertime. Where are you getting that from? This is another method of harassment, right? You're basing that in a scanner message. The entire station has a blanket 30 minutes undertime. Where are we getting that from? DOAS and PET. I read those reports to y'all where they say, when you come in the morning, get your projections on PET and DOAS and set your day's expectations before the carriers even get in there, before the parcels are even thrown, before all the mail's even thrown. Get your day's expectations ready under PET and DOAS. I've told you about PET, all the episodes we've done about PET, not knowing that all this shit was coming, but here it is, perfectly aligned for what we've been trying to educate y'all on as far as PET and DOAS and how to attack those things. That is what that scanner message is doing. All carriers have 30 minutes. All carriers, the whole station, 30 minutes of undertime. Where are you getting that from? And let's grieve it. Because this scanner message is all the evidence that I need. I don't need statements. I've got this scanner message. It's screenshotted. I've got this. This is going in the file. Now, you're saying that the carriers all have 30 minutes undertime? That's a projection based off of DOAS. That's in violation of those memos that we always talk about, the DOAS memo. You cannot set my leave time. You cannot set my return time by DOAS. That's what that is, right? So anytime you see that on a scanner, that's what I'm going to do. Carriers, remember, you all have 30 minutes extra to meet your 8-hour day. If you have overtime, 30 minutes of that is undertime. So they're trying to steal from us, bully us, really, into giving them 30 minutes of undertime, even if we don't have it. And these stations, these smaller stations that don't know any better, what are they going to do to get that 30 minutes? Skip a lunch? Possibly. Skip both their 2 10-minute breaks on the street? Probably. What about take breaks as needed in the heat? Is that gone by the wayside? More than likely. Because you have management that's looking at a computer projection based off of something they cannot use and telling us what to do based off of that. We've got to start grieving these scanner messages. And I really wish, I said this already, but I really wish our business agents would put out a one-time template. If any scanner message comes out about these things, grieve it under this right here, and this is what we're going to do. But, Stuart, on this one here, I'd go back and I'd say, hey, on this scanner message, it said, carriers, remember you have 30 minutes extra to meet your 8-hour day. If you have any overtime, 30 minutes of that is undertime. Where did you get that from? Where'd you get? And don't take, we didn't have any mail. Well, we didn't have any mail today. No. No, you got that projection from somewhere because you put it out on a scanner message. 30 minutes of that is undertime. So where did you see that 30 minutes of our day was undertime? What are you looking at? It's Doris and Pitt, all right? All right, here's another. All time is ready. Everyone has an hour of undertime today. There was no mail or packages. Anyone out past 6 will be pulled into the office the following day. Now, that's a threat of violence. And y'all may be laughing at me. That is a threat of violence. And I'm going to file a JSOV on that. You're not going to pull me anywhere. You can ask me to come in. You predetermine what you're going to do, but you're not going to put your hands on me. And that's just how petty I fucking am. I'm not tolerating this shit, man. I'm so sick of management right now. I've always hated these motherfuckers, but let's read this again. All time is ready. Everyone has an hour of undertime today. There was no mail or packages. Well, if there's no mail or packages, what am I even doing going to the street? If there's no mail or packages, hey, you're going to pay me 8 hours of guaranteed time. I'm going to the house. If there's no mail or packages, that's what it says. Everyone has an hour of undertime. Today, there was no mail or packages. Well, damn. That sounds like a good day for me. No mail or packages. Ask them where they got that from. Anyone out past 6 will be pulled into the office the following day. Now, you're threatening me with violence. And I'm going to file a JSOV on that. A mutual respect on that. That's just how I am. And that's exactly what I do. I'm not going to tolerate this shit, man, putting that out on the scanner. Because, again, you've got people, when you read that, are going to be scared of that. They're not going to be like me and you to tell them to go fuck off. You're not going to pull me anywhere. They're not going to be like us. Some people will see that and be scared of that. And that's just the way it fucking is. That's the way the city letter carrier craft is. You got some that will stand up, and that you've got some that are not like that. I was talking to a gentleman the other day, and it was a beautiful story he was telling me. We talked for about an hour on my route. And it was a shop steward, and he asked if he could talk to me about some things. I said, yeah. And he said that he had stepped down as a shop steward and was kind of dismayed. Kind of like me on the Formula A. Remember, I had that episode about the coward, the quitter, and the boogeyman. And he said that he was listening to the podcast, and he kind of got a fire lit under him. He got back into it. But he said that he was, some people had asked him to get into it, and he said he really didn't want to. He really didn't want to. And he said that his wife is the exact opposite of him. She's very meek and very mild. She doesn't speak up for herself much. Real soft-spoken. And he says he comes home, and she knew he had had a meeting with the branch president, and she was kind of like, what was that about? And he said, well, they're asking me to be, the shop steward again. And he said, she immediately said, do it. Do it. And, he's kind of like, really? You don't ever speak up about anything. Really? You think I should do it? Why do you think I should do it? She said, because there are people like me who need voices like you. And that's what she told him. There are people like me, meek and mild, and want to stay out of the fray. We don't want to come into work and get into all this aggression. We want to come in and do our jobs and be left alone. It's not in our nature to be vocal and forward. We need people like you that are accustomed to that, who choose violence, who are lions, or jackals, or wolves. We need those. The sheep needs the shepherd, right? To protect them from those things that would try to harm them. And that's what his wife was saying. Because people like me need people like you. I thought that was a fantastic story. But these messages are a perfect example of that. Because there are people out there that need people like us to defend them, right? There are people out there where they'll see that message and they'll be like, oh, shit, I need to skip my lunches and my breaks. I do not want to be pulled into the office. What if I get in trouble? What if I get disciplined? I definitely don't want to get disciplined, man. I need this job. And they don't understand the process, that nothing will ever happen to you because of some dumb fuck sending out this message. We need wolves and jackals and lions back in positions as stewards and Formula A's and branch presidents and business agents and executive councils and presidents. We don't have that anymore. We have lost our way somewhere. And we have allowed cowards and skunks and clowns and possums to get in positions of protection, and we're reaping the whirlwind because of it. We have a president right now who is a possum, a clown, a coward, and we are all reaping the whirlwind because of that. We have got to get back to being wolves and lions and jackals. Messages like this wouldn't be sent out if those in authority for the NALC were fucking jackals and lions and wolves. Messages like that wouldn't be going out across this country. They'd be too fucking scared to do it. But they're not, because they see that we're weak at the top. We're weak in the president's position locally. We're weak at the Formula A. We're weak at the shop steward level. We're weak at the business agent level. And because of that, things get sent out like this, trying to intimidate my brothers and sisters, trying to harm us, trying to make us give up things, breaks and lunches, trying to make us give up those things because will be pulled into the office. If you do this, I'm going to pull you into the office. You ain't going to pull shit, bitch. You're going to pull this grievance out of your ass. That's the only thing you're going to pull. You're going to pull this fucking grievance out of your funky ass tomorrow after that scanner message gets sent out. That's the only thing you're going to pull. These motherfuckers. Somebody sent me this. Just had a stand-up talk stating that when we are pumping gas, we're now required to log it as a break. I swear to God. Oh, shit. I don't take breaks, so I'll no longer be pumping gas. I'm going to read that again. Just had a stand-up talk stating that when we are pumping gas, we are now required to log it as a break. Do you know why they're doing that? Because it's going to show up as a stationary event. It's going to show up as a stationary event, and their bosses are going to question them about it. That's why they're doing that. That's how far off this has gone off the fucking rails. That's how far off the rails this has gone. Now they're telling them you're pumping gas, you got to be on break. God. Oh, shit. What the fuck? Our union is asleep at the fucking wheel, man. Oh, we should trample that shit. Business agents should have a group of contract killers. And when I'm business agent, I'm telling you, we're mauling some shit. We're mauling some shit. I'm going to have motherfucking SEAL teams going into places, into districts, and wreaking fucking havoc over the audacity of some shit like that. I'm talking about wreaking some fucking havoc. We're going to be scouring motherfucking shit when I'm business agent. Damn it. They're going to rue the day I ever get elected business agent. This shit right here, these messages, shit, motherfucker. That's crazy. Oh, shit. Here's somebody sent me this on Spotify. Met at FMLA. The postmaster took a call on the speaker. Guy on the phone said they have hired someone to watch stationary events. No kidding. They've hired somebody to watch stationary events. They've hired somebody to violate 134 of the M39. They've hired an entire position that's not contractual. What do you think our little bitch-ass president's going to say about it? Nothing. Not a damn thing. It's an inconvenience. He's probably glad for the guy. Well, that's another person that's got a job. They've hired somebody to violate the contract to watch stationary events. Tell me they're not making a killing on us. Tell me they're not making a killing. God bless America. It's already an hour. Shit, I need to start reading this shit. I don't care, man. Well, I'm going to get this shit out. I've been waiting on this shit too long. Here's something that was interesting somebody sent me. And it's to deal with the hour office time. It says management is getting more blatant with their abuse of the 1 hour office time and conditioning of carriers. I found some proof from, should be headquarters, is doing some new conditioning tactics, and I've heard nobody talking about it, so I figured you'd want to be the first to mention it. The new MDD scanner that is rolling out brings back the edit book and change of address update function. It only works if you're in the postal geofence and disappears when you leave and reappears when you return. But it's awfully suspicious that it disappears automatically once you've been clocked in for an hour if you're on office time or not. Do you know why they're doing that? So that you can't show that you're doing your edit book past an hour. I would question, I would look at y'all's clock rings, and I guarantee they're being falsified. JB had a suspicion the other day that they were falsifying ours based off the hour. Well, it's been a little while ago. Based off the hour office time, he's hearing things and seeing things. He's like, I guarantee you they're falsifying these clock rings. He calls me, he tells me that. He said, I guarantee they're falsifying these clock rings to show an hour. Just from things that I'm putting together. He said, I'm waiting for the quarterly, and I'm going to look. Sure enough, all being falsified, our office time. I guarantee this here, they're falsifying y'all's clock rings. So the MDD device brings back the edit book and change of address function. But it disappears after an hour. So they've programmed the scanners now for the hour office time. Crazy shit, man. They're so far ahead of us because we've got our head so far up our fucking ass with this president and the incompetence of the executive council, the complete disaster that they are. Management is just, they're miles ahead of us. If we're running the marathon, they're on mile 20. And we're not even out of the fucking starting gate yet. Because of our incompetence at the fucking top. And here's something that was put up the other day, and Joe DeRocher had a great answer to it, and I just copied and pasted it. Well, I took a screenshot of it, and somebody's talking about management doing continuous one-day counts trying to harass us. They'll be doing a one-day count. They'll do it again, do it again, do it again. And somebody talked about that, and Joe says this, I don't have any arbitrations readily available, but if such counts are rising to the point of harassment, I'd file using M00111. Now, I'll get a pen and paper if they're doing that to y'all station. M00111. Such grievance would be statement-driven, meaning carriers will have to write statements about how often they're being counted, what management is doing while counting if they feel harassed. To bolster your case, and then I didn't get the rest of that, sorry, Joe, but M00111, it states this, it's from November 13th, 1978, but it still just as applies today like it did in 1978. These have no statute of limitations, and management tries to do that in arbitrations before. And we always say, show us the step 4 that's come after this that has made this obsolete. So if local management, the informal or formal, is saying, this is from 1978, show me the step 4 that's come out after this one, making this one obsolete. These have no statute of limitations, right? Right? Okay, so here it is, M00111, November 13th, 1978. Still applies. A one-day count of mail should be utilized for the purposes of intended by the M39 handbook, and local officials are to ensure that one-day counts are not used for the purpose of harassment. Okay? Very good. And Joe, great job. That's a great answer. A lot of these NALC answers are garbage, but that was a great one. That's how you come in strong. Good job. And lastly, before I get into these, it's an hour. I've been talking an hour, and I ain't got into stuff I want to talk about. But I got to do it. I've got to get this over with. All right. This person sent me this, and it's an area report. And it's called the Atlantic Area DMLS Street Inactivity Time Tool. So they've got your stationary time tools. Remember that? You show stationary events. Now they've changed it to inactivity time tool. Like I said, they're spending millions of dollars on this, and they're hiring people to go after us for this. That's how much money they're saving because we have dropped the ball as a union in attacking these things. Now, I know that Mr. Henry in his proposal and his plan has said he's going after this. They're going to put a stop to this. Now, of course, we got 2 more years. Our president now has opted out of this fight. I've read those letters where he said it's an inconvenience. We need that. We need the scanners for packages and shit. Completely missed the point. But they understand that we're weak at the top right now, and they have free reign on us, okay? And that's where the executive council needs to get out of his ass and fight. They need to bypass him. They had an opportunity to get rid of him, kissed his ass, kept him in there, and now we're getting trampled because the executive council put Renfroe in front of the city letter carriers, and that's just the way it is. It's just the way it fucking is. They put the Renfroe in front of the city letter carriers. And I told you that was what they was going to do. And I know I'm ranting here. I shouldn't do this. But I told you that was what I was going to do because you got too many fucking cowards up there that kissed this motherfucker's ass. And And anytime I see shit like this, it pisses me off. I've been doing good this whole episode because I told myself I didn't want to get upset and start cussing. I am trying to do better, but fuck. You see this stuff that management is doing because they know they would not be doing this if we had strong leadership. They just would not. This wouldn't be going anywhere if we had strong leadership. But here it is, Atlantic area DMOS street inactivity time tool. Managers, just a few clicks of the mouse, and I can see last week's SIT outlier for last week, SIT, street inactivity time. So isn't that funny that they call it SIT, which means we're not doing anything, we're sitting on our asses? There's a reason they do that shit. Street inactivity time, SIT outlier for last week. Please share and train your teams on the value of the DMOS tool. Combined with 2 mandatory service talks, PS Form 1564A, DMS breadcrumbs, DOIS, Compass, RIMS, Tax, OT Admin, AVUS, and NDI. We have the toolbox, just need to utilize the tools. So, I want y'all to write these things down, because if we're going to go after them for spying and using covert techniques, look, fuck the business agents and executive council and the president who aren't doing anything. Now, there are some business agents, like I said, that are in this fight with us. All these others, look, you just have to learn to just fuck them, okay? They can go to hell as far as I'm concerned, and that's exactly how I feel. That's exactly how I feel. I'm doing this for city letter carriers only. Anybody else who don't like that can kiss all this ass. The entirety of it, because of shit like this. If you're going to put in an information request, they just told you what to ask for, right? I'm going to send this to Jeremy and have him put it up. Just the screenshot of it. But here's what you'd ask for: combined with 2 mandatory service talks. We're going to ask for those. PS Form 1564A. Ask for that. PS Form 1564A. DMS breadcrumbs. DOIS. Compass. All these things we've read to y'all in the past. RIMS. Tax. OT Admin. AVUS. And NDI. We have the toolbox. Just need to utilize the tools. At a minimum, it starts a conversation. Letter carriers will perform as expected. In most cases, if they clearly understand their movements are completely observable. Now, they're telling you right there, they're violating 134 of the M39. And our president is in agreement with them. I've read you those letters where he says it's an inconvenience. He is in agreement that they can do this, and this is why these programs are going crazy right now. I'm going to read that last thing. Letter carriers will perform as expected. How am I expected to perform? How am I expected to perform? You heard the AVP on that, talking about the metrics. Get them out. Get them out of the office. Treat them like cattle. Get them on the street. Constantly observe them. Let them know that they're constantly be observed. And they'll perform as we expect them to, like robots. Right? Keep it moving. Beat the heat. Keep it moving. Carriers will perform as expected. In most cases, if they clearly understand their movements are completely observable. Does that piss y'all off, or is it just me? Is it just me? That pisses me the fuck off. To think that you've got bitch asses in management positions that sit in air conditioning all damn day, that don't do shit except fuck with us and make programs that fuck with us. And that pisses me off. And you go to your union, and what do they say? Oh, get back out there. Get back out there, young rascal, and get back to it. You're just being inconvenienced now. Sounds like you're bitching a little bit. Get back out there and do what management says. Just understand that they're watching you, and they can watch you, and they're observing you, We have little inconveniences when we come into work now, and this is just one of those things we're going to have to get over. Give me a president that blows the fucking roof off when he sees some shit like that. That gets in business agents' asses for not fucking with people for stuff like that. Give me that president. Give me the president that's a shepherd and not a sheep herder like this bitch we have in there right now. These things are a direct reflection of his cowardly ass leadership. And it pisses me the fuck off to think that my brothers and sisters are out there in this heat right now. And you got unsafe scanner messages. You got them telling us you got all this undertime. Get out out of the office in an hour. 30 minutes undertime, hour undertime. You're being watched. You're being observed constantly. Make sure you don't take any breaks. Right? If you do, pulling you in the office. If something happens, we're pulling you in the office. We are being run over as a craft right now because of our weak-ass leadership. I have never seen it as bad as it is right now on the workroom floor because of our weak-ass leadership. And you've got motherfuckers that will vote to keep this bitch in office knowing that this shit's going on, knowing that they could have made a change and brought in real leadership into this union. They're so fucking worried about their positions. Listen to me. Your position is gone. It's done. You're leaving your office. You're losing this next election. I'm telling you that now. Y'all's bitch asses are gone. And it's because of shit like this is allowed to go on far too fucking long with my brothers and sisters. Far too fucking long. Management has done this shit to us. Y'all are so fucking worried about your high salaries, staying in your air-conditioned offices, that you've allowed this shit to go on. You won't bust a fucking grape. And look at the shit that we're having to tolerate because of y'all's weak-ass leadership up there at the top. Every one of you motherfuckers should be fired that supports this bitch-ass president and the shit that's going on this workroom floor because of his inaction and his inability to represent us and protect us. Damn it. I told myself I wasn't going to cuss today. I was like, dude, just get on it. It's Father's Day. And happy Father's Day, all you fathers out there. Happy Father's Day. I forgot to say that earlier. Apologize. Happy Father's Day to all you fathers out there. But damn it. I see this, man. And you know what I see when I see this? Do you know what I see when I see these things? I see the young lady, young man, that come to work just trying to do the best they can. That's got hell at home, trying to raise kids, probably has kids in aftercare. Got a young man that's raising a family and wanting to come to work and do the best they can. You got seasoned veterans just coming to work, doing the best they can. Come in, get their mail, stick it, want to go out to the street, I'm going to do my job. And you got this shit that they've got to deal with every damn day. They've got to deal with bitch-ass management doing this shit right here because you got some stupid fucking area that's never done shit. Couldn't do our fucking job for a day. Up there with their funky asses writing these things into existence, motherfuckers who couldn't carry a mail bag to save their fucking life in this fucking heat, doing this shit, and the union, our agent, supposed to be our fucking warriors, are not doing shit about it. The carrier is left the fuck alone in the middle, fighting both fucking sides. Fighting management, who's worthless as fuck. Fighting a union now who's worthless as fuck. The NALC, as it is now, is worthless as fuck. And that's just the way it is. And it pisses me off. It just does. It just does. Yeah, I don't apologize for that. Motherfuckers ain't doing shit and are fucking worthless. And I'll tell you that shit to your face in Boston. If you come up to me in Boston, I promise you this. If you say, hey, you're saying this about me, I'm an executive council, I voted for Renfroe, you're a pile of shit, And I'll tell you that to your fucking face in Boston if you come up to me. I'm going to tell you, you're a cowardly motherfucker. Now, what else do you want to talk about? That's how I feel. That's just how I fucking feel. I'm sick of cowardly motherfuckers in my union, man. And it's shit like this that does it. I'm going to read that last bullet point again. I got to get in these fucking things. God, dog. Letter carriers will perform as expected. In most cases, if they clearly understand their movements are completely observable. Then it's got these graphs. Average daily street inactivity time per carrier, 14.95 minutes. That's pretty exact, ain't it? I'll read that again. Average daily street inactivity time per carrier, 14.95 minutes. Total average daily street inactivity time, I can't read that last thing, it's 21. Average daily employees, 84. Average daily street inactivity events, 165. So they're watching the shit out of us. So anyway, there's that. Well, think about all that. Now y'all ready to get into what I was going to talk about? These memos, these reports. I'm sorry, these reports. You have the panel report. I'm going to read that, and I'm going to read Mr. Chris Jackson's rebuttal. Now, here's the thing that upset me. All right, before I get into it, in this, the charges when they were being discussed, okay, you had in this meeting. Now, a lot of people don't understand how these charges are done. You only have a few people in this meeting when the charges are being done, right? You have Mr. Chris Jackson, who brought the charges. You got Mr. Renfroe, maybe his attorney. Charlie Miller, who is Mr. Chris Jackson's TA. Now, if y'all don't know Charlie Miller, he was a national advocate for quite some time. Got a brilliant mind for those things, and he was Mr. Chris Jackson's TA. And the three panel members, okay, and witnesses are questioned. They were not under oath, and that is major because some of these business agents are telling their members that the reason they took this panel report more seriously than they did the Weir report is because with the Weir report, it's just some guy. He's just out here questioning people. They're not under oath. But the reason that we took the panel's report so seriously is because they're under oath. That is blatantly false. That is incorrect. They were not under oath. Right? They also talk about, and you're going to hear this, when I think Mr. Valfiatas even talked about it last week. He said, under FMLA and the ADA, they took those things into consideration because it fell under both of those things. Listen, FMLA and the ADA do not protect you from your actions or discipline. And so that is also a misnomer. That is not true, right? He has no protections from his actions under FMLA and the ADA. But business agents also use that to explain why they didn't do things with Mr. Renfroe. Here's another important note. Mr. Renfroe nor his attorney ever brought up the defense of FMLA or ADA. That was brought up by a member of the panel, and that was irresponsible of that member because if you have three disinterested members, and they call themselves something else, and I'll read that, you now have one of the members in that disinterested panel being interested. They're interested in the way that the outcome came. They're trying to sway this vote a certain way when they incorporated the ADA and FMLA defense. That was not a defense brought forward by Renfroe or his attorney. Okay? That was the panel that did that, and that was completely inexcusable. But regardless, ADA and FMLA do not protect Renfroe from his actions, yet the executive council, a lot of those members, use that as a defense, not doing anything with Renfroe. What I'm going to play you now is an audio of a business agent. And they're probably going to be mad. I'm not going to name them. But this is what it is. They're in a meeting with several people, and they're talking about different things. And this business agent starts talking about leaks. We have leaks. That's why we can't tell you what's going on with the contract. Look, we don't know anything. And the reason we don't know anything, the reason they don't tell us anything, is because of leaks, like the Renfroe charges. And then he goes on to say that the Weir report was leaked to try to influence the panel. Well, the Weir report was leaked because it was y'all's right to hear that. And whatever. It obviously didn't affect anything because they voted for the bitch to stay in office. So then he tries to dismiss the Weir report, even though they had not read it yet. So how he knows what's in it, I do not know, because they've not read it unless somebody leaked it to him. He talks about under oath, completely false. They were not under oath when they were being in front of the panel, right? When they were testifying in front of the panel. Completely dishonest. But listen to how, even in this report, they dismiss the Weir report. Listen to how this business agent dismisses the Weir report because the fix was in. The fix was in. They knew that this guy was going to make it. Here's Mr. Weir. He's you want to talk about disinterest? He's neutral. He's retired. He didn't ask to investigate it. Barner went to him and asked him to investigate it. Right? Went to him and asked him to investigate it, so he just starts investigating. Very thorough investigation. He has no skin in the game. No dog in the hunt. Listen to how they treat Mr. Weir and his report. I'm going to play this for you. This is the business agent, and it kind of shows you their mindset. The gig is up. The fix is in. They know going into it already. Here's what we're going to do. So I'm going to play this. It'll kind of set you up for this report. Listen again how they try to dismiss Weir, even though allegedly they've not read the Weir report or the panel report until that Friday. But here it is.
The station involved in the financial package, and only 3 resident officers involved, and that is simply because we can't do anything. We can't do anything without getting leaked, right? I mean, the charge against President Renfroe were leaked. There's a process set out in the Constitution where he gets due process just like anybody else. The charges would obviously come out after. They were leaked just to pressure the Executive Council to vote a certain way. So whatever you think about the charges, it is what it is. I'm going to vote how I'm going to vote. Y'all can be mad at me or happy with me or whatever you want. It's not going to change my opinion whatsoever. And I'm sure, the three panel, it's not a secret, the 3 panel. So when the charges came out, they had one guy come investigate it. He was supposed to be unbiased. And then we got his report. Then we voted on whether the charges were substantial or not. 4 out of the 8 were deemed by the Executive Council to be substantial. So then a 3-party committee went and investigated that. And within 30 days, they issued a report. Their report has been issued, and then we're going to meet in D.C. to discuss the findings, the factual findings of the committee. That committee took testimony. People were under oath. The other one was just him talking to people. Under these ones, it was just like an arbitration. They were under oath. They did direct examination, cross-examination, all that stuff. So that report's out. We'll be done with this nonsense. One way or another, we'll be done with this nonsense soon. Well, it's going to get appealed to the convention. We'll be done after Boston, all right, with this. But the Executive Council will be done with it next week, which, thank God, because it's a disaster.
All right. So you heard several mistruths right there, untruths. They were not under oath, right? But he told his people they were under oath, trying to sell that. That was dishonesty. He said that the Weir report came out and they voted on those charges. That is untrue. Even Mr. Vafieta's last episode, I asked him specifically, was the first time you saw the Weir report on that Friday, the day you voted? He said yes. This individual on this recording says what? The Weir report came out. We voted on the 4 of the 8 charges. That is incorrect. That is not what happened. They had a prima facie case. Mr. Jackson had the 8 charges, and they looked at those minus the Weir report. Remember, those charges prompted the Weir investigation, right? It was not vice versa. So when he says you had the Weir report, we voted on that, had the 4 of the 8 charges, that is untrue. Nobody read the Weir report until that Friday, the day of the vote. The panel report. You heard how this business agent was dismissive of Weir. Just some guy talking with some people. They weren't under oath. He was supposed to be neutral, and the implication is that he was not. He's retired. Like I said, he has no skin in the game. He's just doing an investigation. Called me several times. Very thorough. If you look at the report, I read y'all the report, very thorough. You see how dismissive the executive council or members of that executive council were with Mr. Weir's report. Just some kook. He had something to gain. He was out after Mr. Renfroe. You'll hear the panels. I'm going to read the panels report. Listen to this, how they were dismissive, even going so far as to kind of patronizing a little bit, all right? But I wanted to play that because I wanted to show y'all that the fix was in, and it pisses me off. I've always said, you put the city letter carrier first, everything you do, you'll win. If you love us and put us first, you will always succeed, even when you fail, because we'll have your back. When you do shit like this, you have a president that's completely shit on the members, and you rally around him rather than us, shit like this happens. It's karma. And that's a motherfucker, right? So I wanted to play that because this business agent was untruthful with his members when he said that they were under oath. They're not under oath. They weren't under oath. So maybe that was misspoke. Maybe it was misspoken. Maybe he misunderstood. But they were not under oath. All right, now we're fixing to get to the long part of the episode. I'm an hour and 34 minutes in. Damn. But all right, here's the unredacted panel's report. Okay, Article 10 report and recommendations to the NALC Executive Council. Preamble. This report and its recommendations are submitted to the NALC Executive Council by virtue of the duties assigned to the panel by the Council pursuant to Article 10 of the NALC Constitution. We think it worth noting that the panel and all of the parties to the hearings have, from the inception, recognized the gravity and magnitude of the issue before us. In some 134-year history of the NALC, this is the first time that Article 10 charges have been filed against the national president by a sitting member of the Executive Council. And as such, the exercise of the hearings process and duties of this panel is unprecedented. All of us are plowing new ground. The panel understands that we were selected on the basis of the reputation, experience, and institutional knowledge we bring to the process, and also our capacity to be fair, unbiased, and objective. None of us have any close personal ties to either of the parties. None of us hold or are seeking any elective or appointive positions in the NALC, and so there are no political considerations in play. We came to the process neutral. As previously mentioned, this particular exercise of Article 10 is unprecedented, and so we have no prior history to refer to, no direct on-point templates for conducting the hearings. Furthermore, Article 10 makes no specific provisions for what the process should be or the evidentiary standards to apply. The panel decided to use process and evidentiary standards approximate to those commonly used in labor arbitrations. one which all the parties are very familiar with. However, this process has some inherent distinguishing factors from labor arbitration which necessitated some variations. Our appointment and hearings were preceded by an investigative report submitted to the Executive Council pursuant to Article 10. The panel was faced with a decision on what the status of that report was at our stage of the Article 10 process. It is our view that in the scheme of Article 10, the role of the investigator is to conduct a fact-finding mission. Accordingly, the panel notified the parties in advance that what was contained in the investigative report, which was represented as facts, would be treated as established facts unless refuted by the weight of evidence presented at the hearings, but also that which could be viewed as the opinion of the investigator would not carry weight. Because the charges are against the national president, the executive vice president assumed the duties of assigning the panel with the administrative aspects of the hearing. The panel recognizes here and credits Executive Vice President Paul Barner for his extraordinary assistance and cooperation throughout this process. From the inception, he assured the panel of our independence, the faith which the Executive Council had in us, and importantly, that we would be provided with whatever resources and permitted to take whatever time was necessary to properly perform our duties. Those assurances were entirely fulfilled. The panel advised both the charging and charge parties in advance of the process and evidentiary standards to be used, and ground rules for the proceedings. We in turn provided assurances to them that they would be provided with ample time to present their cases and that we would stand as genuine neutrals during the hearings and in the crafting and submission of our report and recommendations to the Council. Hearings were held at NALC headquarters in Washington, D.C. The parties were present in person to present their cases on the 4 separate charges before us. There were numerous witnesses called. Most appeared in person. Some witnesses testified virtually using technology, which would not compromise the panel's ability to assess their credibility and veracity of their testimony. Considerable documentary evidence was submitted by the parties and entered as either joint or charging and charge party exhibits. 12 days of hearings were held during the period of December 12, 2023 through February 16th of 2024. It was not an easy task to reconcile the busy schedules of both the national president, director of city delivery, and the numerous witnesses, most of who were national officers or NALC staff, either at headquarters or in the field. Closing arguments presented to the panel March 7, 2024, concluding the hearings. The panel extended to and notes here our appreciation for the extraordinary cooperation and professionalism which both parties exhibited during the entire process. We turn now to our findings, report, and recommendations to the Council. The panel sees no need for an exhaustive recitation of all the testimony and evidence presented at the hearings. The Council has already reviewed the investigative report and the responses to the charges submitted by both parties. The documentary evidence in the record is available for the Council's pursuit as it deems necessary and appropriate. The panel stands available to answer any questions the Council may have about us and or to appear before the Council should it see fit to request that. And so, this report provides a summary of the significant and substantial material and arguments which were presented to us and our conclusions. Charges. As a preliminary to the charge party, President Renfroe asserts that in order for a charge under Article 10 to be upheld, the conduct must rise to the level of neglect of duty and or a violation of the NALC Constitution. Given the language in the first sentence of Article 10, the panel agrees with this premise. The 4 charges against National President President Renfroe that are before this panel were filed by Director of City Delivery Christopher Jackson. The panel renumbered these charges for the purposes of our hearings and this report. Charge 1, neglect of duty. The first essential component of this charge is on or about April 20th of 2023, President Renfroe took a leave of absence from the NALC during contract negotiations, which commenced on February 22nd, 2023, for an agreement which expires on midnight, May 20th of 2023. The inference here is that President Renfroe neglected his duties by being absent during this period of time. There is no dispute that Renfroe was on medical leave during the period April 17 through June 26, 2023, for the purpose of receiving treatment for alcoholism. At the hearings, Renfroe provided the panel with medical documentation confirming this. It is the panel's understanding that there is legal precedent which holds that under the Americans with Disabilities Act, alcoholism is a covered disability, and employers are required to provide reasonable accommodations for this disability. Such accommodation includes allowing employees to take leave for the purpose of alcohol treatment and rehabilitation without penalty. We also understand that, in addition, similar rights to leave exist under the Family and Medical Leave Act. Further, NALC has long advocated for similar considerations for our members pursuant to Article 35 of the National Agreement. Now, I'll stop there. The ADA and the FMLA were not brought forward by Mr. Renfroe or his attorney, right? The panel inserted those defenses for him. And I do know that there was an objection by Mr. Jackson and his counsel that was inappropriate. And I'll get into that a little bit later. But so he did not bring up those defenses of the ADA and FMLA. That was inserted by this non-interested panel, okay? Further, NALC has long advocated for similar considerations for our members pursuant to Article 35 of the National Agreement. Thus, the panel believes that the Executive Council should not impose any of the penalties provided for in Article 10 of the Constitution for Renfroe's absence during this period. The next component of this charge is, during the period of the weeks preceding the opening session, President Renfroe was missing and his whereabouts were unknown. Renfroe pointed the panel to a document and evidence that listed an extensive summary of his activities during the period of January 3, 2023 through the opening of collective bargaining on February 2022, 2023. It shows a host and multitude of activities pertaining to the performance of presidential duties, including many related to preparations for a collective bargaining. Many of those activities involved NALC officers and staff who then certainly knew where he was. This evidence was undisputed. Corey Keller Blaylock serves as the National President's Chief of Staff. She testified that she is in touch with Renfroe virtually every day, whether he is in the NALC headquarters building or not, and is aware of all of his activities. She verified the veracity of Renfroe's summary of activities. In the investigative report submitted to the Executive Council, the investigative Mike Weir stated, President Brian Renfroe started his leave of absence on April 17th. Prior to then, he was absent for significant periods of time during which no one knew where he was. Weir testified at the hearings. Neither his report nor his testimony provided any concrete evidence addressing that. It is unclear exactly what days and times he is referring to, what his definition of significant was, and whom he spoke with or otherwise learned of information that would lead to that conclusion. Weir makes reference to his enclosure of the door access flat report, which he attached with the submission of his investigative report. That report provides a record of when authorized individuals enter the headquarters garage, entry doors, and use of elevators. Renfroe pointed out during his testimony whether or not he was in the building on any particular day or days is not by itself indicative of him not performing the duties of his position. He argues that this was particularly the case in the aftermath of COVID-19. Renfroe admits to being absent on a number of days in the lead-up to the opening of negotiation. He claims, however, that most of that was related to his alcoholism and associated infirmities, and that none of this affected his duties of preparing the NALC for collective bargaining in any substantial way. Also, there was unrefuted testimony from current President Renfroe and retired President Fred Rolando that there is nothing in the NALC Constitution or any current policy that requires the President of the NALC to get permission from anyone to take leave, nothing which requires the President to report when such leave will begin and end, and nothing that requires the President to document the need for leave. That said, and as an aside, the panel presumes that as a matter of courtesy and good business practice, the President would normally keep those with a need to know informed, and although this is beyond our province, suggests that steps be taken by the Executive Council to best assure that happens. The next component of Charge 1 is President Renfroe's continual absence and no-shows during a critical time of negotiations has adversely impacted the union's ability to effectively represent the NALC's objectives during contract negotiations, emphasis added. And President Renfroe's departure left the bargaining team with no notes or evidence of advanced preparation for negotiations. This placed the replacement negotiating team at a disadvantage of having to start from scratch midway through the negotiated period. This claim is really at the heart of charge number 1. The charge makes specific reference to Article 9, Section 1E of the NALC Constitution, which provides in pertinent part, the President shall have the authority and responsibility for carrying out the collective bargaining duties of the Union. We read this clause as a general, overall mandate and obligation to be at the head of the Union's collective bargaining efforts, but it does not designate the President to any specific assignments during the course of collective bargaining negotiations. An important specific designation is made elsewhere in the Constitution, which we will confirm to infra. This said, there is no doubt that should the President substantially fail to perform the responsibilities set forth in the above referenced clause, they could be guilty of neglect of duty and a violation of the Constitution. The charging party, Brother Jackson, presented 2 main witnesses to testify at the hearings on these points. Before reviewing their testimony, it is useful to point out a development which evolved during the course of the hearings. A plain reading of charge number 1 on its face suggests that Jackson is accusing Renfroe of dereliction with respect to the entire bargaining process, including work rules. During the hearings, however, the charging party's arguments and evidence for the most part addressed bargaining on the economic issues, pays, benefits, and other financial compensation. The first witness was Executive Vice President Paul Barner. Barner testified that he had no prior direct experience with the union's economic bargaining. He stated that in the lead up to and during the time that he was substituting for President Renfroe on the economic bargaining with the Postal Service, that Renfroe did not provide him with much help with preparations. He stated that all along he did not have substantial conversations with Renfroe about the economic bargaining, was not given a specific plan, notes, advice, or instructions. Barner said that all of this made him feel at some disadvantage, and he was sort of starting from scratch at the beginning of economic negotiations. That led him to reach out to former NALC President Fred Rolando. He asked, and Rolando agreed to join Barner in the economic negotiations. Under cross-examination and questions from the panel, Barner confirmed that although there was some delay and lack of communication in the beginning, the entry of Rolando, because of his vast experience with economic bargaining and his relationship with Deputy Postmaster General and Chief Negotiator for the Postal Service, Doug Tolino, allowed the NALC to hit the ground running, and that the economic negotiations had gotten back on track. At the end of the day, he did not believe that the ability of the NALC to achieve its economic goals in bargaining had been compromised. Former NALC President Fred Rolando appeared at the hearing. Although called to the stand by Chris Jackson, it turned out that the testimony was relevant to the arguments being made by both parties. Rolando testified about his experience leading the NALC through 3 prior rounds of national contract negotiations. He confirmed that in every round, the NALC's approach, particularly on the economic package, is in large part dictated by outside forces and conditions such as the state of the U.S. labor economy, the financial condition of the Postal Service, developments in bargaining with other postal unions and unions outside the Postal Service, and changes in the working conditions and contributions of letter carriers, and that while there are some constants, each president has brought their own approach to the process. As to his involvement in the present round of negotiations, he agreed that his prior experience and his relationship with Tolino allowed him and Executive Vice President Barner to get the economic negotiations up to speed. He testified, and he and Barner had 8 meetings with Tolino on the economics package prior to May 20th, the expiration of the current contract. That they initially shared with the Postal Service a customarily used table that Fred had put together the previous year with the assistance of Jim Yates. Yates, the NALC Director of Mutual Benefits Association, is also a labor economist and has performed that function for NALC bargaining in past negotiations. The tables he provides present cost analysis, starting pay, top pay, number of steps, waiting periods, etc. so that the parties can see what the cost of changes will entail. Significantly, because Fred and Paul believe that good progress is being made, they asked Yates for an updated table to share with Tolino. Rolando testified that he believes the state of these negotiations was a good place when Renfroe returned and he left the bargaining. Under questioning from the panel, Rolando opined that for a variety of reasons, one could not deduce that Renfroe's initial absence from the negotiations for the reason that bargaining has not been concluded at this point in time. Still, Rolando reiterated in testimony what he said to Weir during Weir's investigation, that in his opinion, Renfroe stepping away for treatment for his alcoholism at that stage of negotiations was negligent and potentially disastrous. That there were a number of instances of alcohol-related misbehavior Renfroe had engaged in, which Rolando was aware of, and which, in his opinion, should have led Renfroe to seek treatment prior to this critical period of time. He did appear to walk this back some in his testimony by saying this would be all be so if it was on purpose. Which brings us to an important point, one which touches upon not only Rolando's opinion on this, but it's reflected throughout the charges before us. To wit, a lack of knowledge and or misunderstanding of medically established facts about the disease of alcoholism and the behavior of alcoholics. Renfroe entered into evidence expert information on this subject and included 1. A paper from the National Institute of Alcohol Abuse and Alcoholism titled Alcohol Use Disorder, From Risk to Diagnosis to Recovery, Renfroe Exhibit 1, and 2. A medically reviewed paper from the Recovery Village titled Why Do Alcoholics Lie, Renfroe Exhibit 6. This evidence is enlightening and informative on the broad issue of alcoholism and also particularly to the incident point. It demonstrates alcoholics experience a continuum and series of cycles with respect to recognition of their disease and the need to seek treatment and rehabilitation. Assistant Secretary Treasury Mac Julian testified as a witness called by Jackson. He established his credentials as a certified addiction counselor with a 2-year degree in mental health and addiction studies. His testimony, for the most part, comported with the information contained in the above referenced papers. Renfroe testified to the panel about his long struggle with alcoholism. He insisted that until March of 2023 he was fully functional and performed all the duties of NALC president. He said that was true when he held the position of executive vice president as well. He stated that around the middle of March his alcoholic condition and several associated infirmities began to rapidly accelerate and exacerbate. Those incidents which had occurred and the way he was feeling made it clear to him that he was dysfunctional and physically not in a position to adequately perform his duties. Thus, he decided to step away and receive treatment and engage in rehabilitation. He admitted that he understood that the timing was disadvantageous and that there might be some impact. He stated that although he knew there would be some criticism of him, he needed to prioritize what he thought to be in the best interest of the NALC and himself. Turning back to the issue of whether his absence adversely impacted the union's ability to effectively represent the NALC's objectives during contract negotiations as charged, he pointed that prior to his taking leave, the NALC had been engaged in extensive and intensive preparations for this round of bargaining for quite some time. He stated that he had led these preparations and had set up an internal structure as well as established with USPS how both work rules and economic discussions would be handled. He insisted that he had consistently communicated all this to NALC officers and staff that were involved. He pointed out that the NALC's general bargaining goals were no secret. As usual, they were the product of convention bargaining resolutions and planning sessions with the executive council, staff, and the legal department. That he had enunciated these goals at both his installation ceremony and the opening of bargaining with the Postal Service, and that this would also communicated to the NALC membership via the NALC website, postal record, NALC bulletin, and at meetings in the field. This testimony was not disputed. Renfroe was emphatic that in this round of bargaining, NALC was in a strong position and that he has been and remains highly confident that he will achieve our main goals. Renfroe also testified that he had full confidence in Executive Vice President Barner's ability to step up during his absence pursuant to the provisions of the NALC Constitution. On this point, Renfroe related when he realized he was in trouble, he went to Barner to consult and let him know he planned to take leave to enter treatment and rehab. He indicated that Barner was very supportive. He said that Barner expressed that he thought this was the right thing to do and told him not to worry about negotiations. They had it covered and that Renfroe should focus on recovery. Renfroe also testified that while he was on leave, he had conversations with Barner in which Barner repeated that, told him that things are going well, and urged him not to rush to return. The testimony of Barner at the hearings corroborated and comported with this. In further support of this argument that NALC was well prepared for negotiations and interest arbitration, if necessary, Renfroe called upon former Chief of Staff Jim Sauber. Sauber was hired by former NALC President Vincent Brado as a research economist in 1985. He became the research director in 1990. In 2004, he was appointed as Chief of Staff to former President Bill Young. He served in that same capacity under President Rolando. During that time, Sauber was heavily involved in collective bargaining. He participated in 9 rounds of bargaining starting in 1987. Amongst other things, he coordinated the work of professional staff for collective bargaining. He played a major role in the NALC's search for hiring and preparation of outside experts for interest arbitration. He corroborated previous testimony that each national president brought some of their own approach to the bargaining process. He said that the one unifying thing was the response of NALC to both the internal and external circumstances at the time. Sauber is now retired, but he is on board as a consultant for these negotiations. He has been involved in planning and preparations for over a year and believes that NALC is ready to go. As to interest arbitration, if necessary, he testified about a long and impressive list of highly regarded experts who are being prepared to testify on NALC's behalf, and about other tactics which NALC will employ, which we will not reveal here for obvious reasons. We say here as a panel that in our opinion, anyone listening to this could not help but think that the Postal Service would be wise to settle with us. Panel conclusion on charge number 1. The charging party bears the burden to prove neglect of duty on violation of the Constitution by Renfroe. The party has failed to meet that burden of proof in this charge. As of the preparation for this report, the outcome of contract negotiations is yet to be determined, but there is no proof that any actions or inactions by Renfroe have seriously compromised the union's ability to achieve its bargaining goals. The testimony of Renfroe relating to the times preceding and during negotiations was undisputed, and both parties agreed that the leave taken by Renfroe beginning on April 17th was covered by ADA. As to the leave Renfroe took beginning on April 7th, 2023, we have spoken to its protected status, supra. To address the issue of preparations for negotiations, the evidence speaks for itself. The charging parties refers to a replacement negotiating team in this charge, but in fact there was no replacement team. Article 9, Section 2A of the NALC Constitution provides that the Executive Vice President shall preside in the absence of the President. That is what occurred in this instance. The only change was Barner's decision to bring in former President Rolando to assist him while Renfroe was gone. That decision appears to have been wise and accrued to the benefit of the NALC and its members by having the most knowledgeable and experienced person around added to the mix. And both Renfroe and Rolando commended Barner for the job he did in Renfroe's absence. Furthermore, it must be pointed out that Article 9, Section 2C provides that the Executive Vice President shall serve as the Director of Collective Bargaining Negotiations, emphasis added. Now it is understood that historically the National President has headed up the negotiations on the economic component of bargaining, but the Constitution does not specify or require that. Regardless, per the above-cited constitutional provisions, it is the duty of the Executive Vice President to prepare herself for the possibilities of having to assume those responsibilities. For all the above reasons, it is the recommendation of the panel to the Executive Council that Brother Renfroe be found not guilty of this charge. Charge 2. There are 2 essential components to this charge. The first is circulating false or misleading statements about an NALC officer. The second is that Renfroe shared and referenced confidential information about an employee matter. Although the officer at issue is NALC Vice President James Henry, Brother Henry did not file this charge. Instead, Brother Jackson filed it for the most part on Henry's behalf. Testimony and other evidence adduced at the hearing revealed that 2 prominent female headquarters staff members had brought allegations to NALC President Renfroe that Henry had engaged in improper conduct with them, which they deemed as unwanted and sexual in nature. These allegations originated in Marietta, Georgia, where the Executive Council was holding an Executive Council meeting during the period January 23rd through 26, 2023. Renfroe claimed that other headquarters staff members made similar allegations to him over the course of several weeks, but for a variety of reasons, none of that was flushed out at these hearings one way or another. It is undisputed that Renfroe contacted 6 former and current national officers and a letter carrier staff member about these allegations. Both in his written defense to the charge and his testimony at the hearings, Renfroe claimed that he did so solely to seek advice and counsel about how to handle such an allegation against a national officer. It is also undisputed that during these conversations, Renfroe mentioned the names and the 2 staffers and who the accused was. But he insists that he asked those individuals to keep their conversations in confidence. In his investigative report, Mike Weir indicated that he spoke with each of these individuals and that they all asserted that they had not shared any information about these conversations with anyone else. Nevertheless, rumors about all this started circulating at the NALC Region 1 training, which was conducted March 30th to April 1st, 2023. There is no proof Renfroe directly circulated the rumors or allegations about Henry at this event. Henry was not physically at the training. He made a virtual presentation. Henry testified that when he first learned of this, he was shocked and indignant. The record shows that Henry wanted to address this one-on-one with President Renfroe. Also, Renfroe was willing to do that. A chain of correspondence between them shows the attempts were made to set up a meeting, but the meeting never happened. The reason why had been a bone of contention in these hearings. There is insufficient evidence to assign blame to either party. In the absence of such meeting, Henry, who understandably had concern about his reputation, brought the matter to the attention of Executive Vice President Paul Barner and asked for some sort of investigation. The charge asserts that Executive President Barner conducted an investigation. Testimony at the hearing established that this is not accurate. Instead, Barner brought the matter of Director of Human Resources Ken Raker and asked him to do an investigation. We return to the results of that investigation later. This brings us to another cause of disagreement that emerged at the hearings. NALC has a policy prohibiting workplace harassment and discrimination. It was entered into the record as Jackson Exhibit 1. It is a comprehensive policy which covers conduct and procedures, including reporting requirements. Supervisor-manager reporting obligations. All supervisors and managers who receive a complaint or information about suspected harassment or discrimination, observe what may be harassing or discriminatory behavior, or for any reason suspect that sexual harassment is occurring, are required to report such conduct to Ken Raker, Director of Human Resources. At the hearing, the charging party pointed the panel to this clause as part of the argument that Renfroe had neglected his duties. At that point, Renfroe objected on the basis that the charge made no mention of or allegations that he had failed to follow the procedures in the policy. A recess was called for the panel to confirm this objection. We return with the following procedural ruling. Evidence and arguments concerned with NALC policy on workplace harassment, discrimination, and sexual harassment is not relevant or material to charge number 2. This charge accuses Renfroe of circulating false and misleading statements about an NALC officer. Introducing matters pertaining to NALC policy in this context is an unfair expansion of the charge as a matter of due process. Beyond that, Renfroe asserts that while the prohibited behaviors in the policy apply to national officers, the process for dealing with allegations of violations by national officers is different than that which the policy sets forth at will employees. For example, he points to a clause in the policy which provides discipline, harassment, and discrimination will not be tolerated. Any supervisor, manager, or employee who engages in harassing and discriminatory behavior and supervisors and managers who allow such conduct to continue will be subject to disciplinary action up to and including termination. Renfroe insists that an allegation of any violation of the conduct prescribed in the policy, an investigation, and or any discipline for that falls under the purview of Article 10 of the NALC Constitution. Notwithstanding any of that investigation by Director of Human Resources Ken Raker did ensue, Raker testified at the hearings under direct and cross-examination and questioning from the panel. The following salient points were established. Raker was asked by Executive Vice President Paul Barner to conduct his investigation. No formal complaint was made by the two female staffers, nor did they ask HR for an investigation. Rather, Barner asked Raker to investigate the complaint of James Henry about the rumors and allegations made against him. Renfroe did not convey any direct allegations against Henry to Raker. Raker did not investigate any actions by Renfroe. Renfroe was not involved in the mechanics of the investigation. Raker interviewed both female staffers. Raker was questioned on what the two female staffers told him. Raker refused to provide the panel with that information, claiming it was prescribed. When asked what the conclusions of investigation were, he replied, "Inconclusive." He testified that this was what he conveyed to Barner. The panel thinks it noteworthy here that in the charging paper, Jackson claims that at the special meeting of the Executive Council, Barner informed the council that he had the matter fully investigated and there was no substance to the allegations. Obviously, this does not comport with the answer Raker gave us, nor with what Barner told us about that in testimony. He will return to this later. Renfroe seeks to elicit certain points from Raker's testimony in further support of his contentions that he never made direct allegations about Henry to anyone, rather that he was acting upon allegations of others brought to him. Jackson, on the other hand, maintains that Renfroe did make direct allegations against Henry. His argument is that this goes to Renfroe's intent. Witnesses testified on this point at the hearings. Both Barner and Rolando said that they interpreted their conversation with Renfroe when he consulted with them as Renfroe making the allegations. But a number of others that Renfroe consulted with indicated in their testimony that they deemed it as Renfroe seeking advice on how to handle allegations made by others and in any information they might have that might bear upon the credibility of such allegations. For the panel, all of this is a wash as to the weight of probative evidence on intent. We turn now to another important point. A principal argument of Renfroe is that the guilt or innocence of Henry with respect to the allegations is not an issue before this panel. Rather, whether or not he is guilty of circulating rumors and sharing confidential information in a manner that constitutes neglect of duty or a violation of the Constitution. Jackson, on the other hand, stands adamantly by his argument that Henry's guilt or innocence is at issue. He points to the fact that his charge accuses Renfroe of circulating false or misleading statements. Thus, he argues he should have the opportunity to prove Henry's innocence to show that such statements were indeed false. And so, naturally, Jackson attempted to use the hearings as a vehicle to bring that issue to trial, not only to prove falsity, but to give Brother Henry an opportunity to clear his name. There are some fundamental problems for the panel with doing that. First, Director of Human Resources Ken Raker represented that he conducted a thorough investigation. Raker is a highly experienced and well-credentialed professional. He testified that he has conducted numerous investigations of alleged employee misconduct. As alluded to earlier, Raker found the facts to be inconclusive. Next, while something appears to have been lost in translation when Barner reported the results of the investigation to the council, it remains that the council did not see fit to take any action itself, including, apparently, acceding to Henry's demand for an apology. Also, the nature of these administrative hearings does not find the accused directly facing his accusers or the accusers directly facing whom they claim is the perpetrator. In the face of all that, an exercise by the panel to determine Henry's guilt or innocence would almost certainly not be productive. We would still be left with a status quo, which unfortunately is not uncommon, she said, he said situation. Still, against some objections, the panel allowed both Brother Henry and the two female staffers the opportunity to testify along those lines. We felt that all of them have reputations and services to NALC that earn them the right to, at the very least, have an opportunity to express themselves further for the record. Brother Henry provided the panel with impassioned and obviously heartfelt testimony. He categorically denies engaging in the behaviors of which he was accused. So, of course, he is embittered and indignant about this. He related the history and circumstances of his life and his longtime service to this union. He spoke of his service to our country in the military, his leadership and contributions to his community, and numerous outside organizations, his love and devotion to his wife and family. None of this stands in dispute before us. He expressed deep disappointment and regret about having to face anything like this in what is supposed to be the pinnacle of his career. His frustrations with the indelible stain this all may paint on his reputation. Henry did also provide some testimony and argument relevant to the panel's consideration of the charge. He argued that if it was true that Renfroe was only seeking advice from those he shared information about the allegations with, why did he disclose names? He avers that the NALC president has an affirmative obligation to be fair, that even assuming the allegations were true, such fairness required the president to speak with him about all this first, and that his failure to do so was gross negligence. The two prominent female staffers also testified separately. They described the circumstances of their allegation. It serves no useful purpose to relate all of that in this report, except to say that their testimony is emotional as well as would be expected in such circumstances, and that they were both firm in their insistence that the events they described actually occurred. It is, we think, worth saying that what they related would be best described as inappropriate and improper touching, not sexual assault or ongoing sexual harassment of them by Henry. Also noteworthy is that both testified that when Ken Raker spoke with them about the issue, he told them it will not happen again. This is curious, given Raker's testimony that the results of investigation were inconclusive. What it was that he meant would not happen again. They also gave some testimony relevant to the panel's consideration of the charge. They confirmed that they went to President Renfroe with their unofficial complaints, which bears upon whether or not Renfroe just made this up or initiated the allegations. Significantly, Renfroe argues that even assuming arguendo that he had circulated statements as charged, he still should not be found guilty. He points to the charging party's invocation of Article 9, Section 11E, 17 of the Constitution. It reads in pertinent part, "The Executive Council shall have the power to investigate any branch or member of a branch who interferes in the work of the organization or who circulates false or misleading statements calculated to retard the officers in conducting the organization work." He avers that the idea that he would concoct a plan designed to retard Henry in the performance of his duties or otherwise denigrate, defame, or undermine Henry is nonsensical and absurd. Renfroe testified that although he was the executive vice president at the time, he was heavily involved in former President Rolando's decision to appoint Henry as vice president. Renfroe stated he became VP because of me, with the notion that Rolando was giving great weight to Renfroe's opinions and desires given that Rolando knew he would be retiring and his expectation that Renfroe would succeed him. Renfroe says that he communicated with Henry and shared his excitement about his appointment and that Henry ran for vice president on Renfroe's slate during the 2022 election of national officers. Jackson argues that what occurred was intended to retard Henry, that it was a malicious and vicious plan to undermine him. This brings us to the second component of Charge 2, that Renfroe shared and referenced confidential information about employee matter. It is undisputed that Renfroe shared information about the allegations of the two female staff members with a number of past and present national officers and another staff member that he named Henry, and in some cases the two women. As to the information being confidential, Renfroe, as part of his contention that different procedures apply to national officers on these matters, suggested that he had a right to handle the matter the way he did. Jackson points to a clause found in the NALC policy, Jackson Exhibit 1, in Section A on page 4, which provides in pertinent part, NALC will keep the investigation confidential to the extent possible, and generally laws and confidentiality. Before we come to our conclusion on this charge, the panel makes some observations to the Executive Council for what we believe is the good of our organization. What unfolded here, we believe, evidenced some ambiguous and gaps with respect to how allegations of this sort against national officers should be handled, and that in this case, the process did a disservice to both Brother Henry and to the female staff members. It left Henry in embarrassment and with a stain on his reputation. Setting aside guilt or innocence in this matter, we think Henry's otherwise long and honorable service to NALC has earned him better than that. The 2 female staff members were never really provided with a clear and satisfactory response from the organization. We should all be instructed by the teachings of the Me Too movement on this issue. We ask the Council to consider what, if any, changes or clarification might be made so there is a clear path for all involved, so that employees, supervisors, managers, and officers, and women in particular, because women are overwhelmingly more likely to be victim, are desensitized from reporting it and understand the process for doing so. Panel conclusion on Charge 2. The first piece of this charge is that Renfroe circulating false and misleading statements about James Henry. It is undisputed that rumors about the allegations by the 2 female staff members against Henry circulated. For these reasons set forth in this report, we set aside whether or not the statements were false or misleading. We must judge whether Renfroe circulated them. The panel agrees that even if the evidence led to a yes answer, in order for this to rise to the level of a charge that can be upheld under Article 10 of the NALC Constitution, it must also have been pursuant to the clause the charging party himself invoked, Article 9, Section 11E17, be calculated to retard the officers, in this case Henry, in conducting the organization work. In this instance, one panel member dissents. As to the circulation, the most proximate dictionary definition in this context is to become well known or widespread. Example, rumors circulated through the town. The panel majority does not believe the evidence shows that Renfroe had a plan to circulate the information in that matter. Renfroe testified credibly and without refutation that he asked all the individuals he consulted with to keep the conversation confidential. All those individuals told Weir in his investigation that they did not share it with anyone else. Going to whether there was intent to retard, or worse yet, the charging party's contention that Renfroe did so maliciously and viciously, there is no probative evidence demonstrating that Renfroe had any animus towards Henry. Henry and Jackson pointed to Renfroe in moving some duties from Henry, but that was well after and appears unrelated. To the contrary stands Renfroe's undisputed testimony that he played a major role in bringing Henry to the headquarters as vice president, and that they shared their mutual excitement about this at the time. Moreover, it is a fact that Henry ran for vice president on Renfroe's slate in the 2022 election of national officers. In light of all that, the panel majority believes it strains logic and credulity that conclude intent to retard. The panel dissenter thinks otherwise. The dissent's conclusion is based on inferences. Respectfully, the majority cannot draw those inferences from what the panel knows with certainty. Accordingly, it is the recommendation of the panel majority that the Executive Council find Renfroe not guilty in this portion of charge number 2. Now as to sharing and referencing confidential information about an employee matter, as stated earlier, there is no dispute that Renfroe shared such information, or that the information was confidential as commonly understood, and so Renfroe is guilty of that. This again brings us to the question of whether or not that act rises to the level of neglect of duty or a violation of the Constitution. All bad acts by an officer do not meet that standard. Renfroe believes as the president of the NALC he had a right to do what he did. First, we look back to the NALC policy prohibiting workplace harassment and discrimination and sexual harassment, Jackson Exhibit 1. Specifically, Section A, the NALC will keep the investigative confidential to the extent possible, emphasis added. While the panel's procedural ruling prohibited the charging party from pursuing a case that Renfroe violated this policy, this provision does demonstrate that NALC as an institution consider these matters to be confidential, but it also says that investigations should be kept confidential to the extent possible, so there are exceptions. Does, as Renfroe argues, the circumstances in this matter fall under a contemplated exception? And if not, does it then rise to the level of neglect of duty? Whether an exception applies here is beyond the province of this panel to decide, and it points to the plea we have made to the Council to address certain ambiguities. The panel majority believes that at the very least, Renfroe sharing the information in his efforts to get advice and guidance, even if well-intended, was a very poor exercise of judgment. We think he should have realized that notwithstanding his urging of the individuals to keep this in confidence, there was a high likelihood that rumors would spread, and so, although the panel majority does not believe he intended to circulate rumors, his sharing of the information lit the match that eventually led to the rumors being spread. The damage to Henry's reputation, the emotional and psychological effects of this on him are obvious and regrettable. That said, the panel majority does not think the conduct rises to the level of neglect of duty. The panel dissenter believes there was a neglect of duty, relying on the portion of the oath of office which reads, "I will do everything in my power to promote the welfare of the National Association of Letter Carriers and its members." The panel majority views that as too much of a stretch. If a national officer's actions are in violation of laws that have a nexus to NALC, this could be deemed as neglect of duty as contemplated by Article 10, but there is nothing before the panel which shows that in this matter. Accordingly, and due to the aforementioned constraints on us, we cannot recommend to the council that it finds Renfroe guilty of this portion of the charge either. Charge 3, impaired driving after hours in the NALC vehicle. The record shows that on the night of September 12, 2018, President Renfroe was arrested and charged with driving under the influence of alcohol while driving a vehicle leased and assigned to him by NALC. Both the Weir investigative report and the documents relating to the legal adjudication of this matter contained in Joint Exhibit 1 spell out what was subsequently transpired. Briefly, Renfroe pled guilty to DUI and entered into a court-approved diversion program. After meeting conditions of that program, Renfroe was allowed to withdraw his guilty plea. Further, Renfroe may have the legal record on this matter expunged after a period of 5 years. 5 years have since passed, but it is unclear to the panel whether or not such expungement has yet occurred. Renfroe argues that this matter was adjudicated through the judicial system and that with the expungement in the eyes of the law, this case never happened. But as union representatives, we all know far too well that regardless of the final disposition of a matter in the judicial system, including acquittal, the employer is not barred from taking separate administrative action. The panel believes that this is so in the matter before us as well. In criminal proceedings, that the standards of proof is beyond a reasonable doubt. Here, applying arbitration standard, it is a preponderance of the evidence. To that point, at the hearing, Renfroe professed that while he admitted to consuming some alcohol at dinner that evening, he did not and still does not believe he was impaired. But this is outweighed by the police report of Police Officer Possinger found at pages 52 and 53 of Joint Exhibit 1. That report states, amongst other things, that Possinger observed Renfroe's vehicle swaying, distinctly smelled alcohol in Renfroe's breath when he approached the vehicle and the police station, observed bloodshot eyes, observed slurring of speech. These are the professional observations of a highly experienced and well-trained police officer. Beyond that, the police report indicates that at the time, Renfroe admitted to the officers that he probably would not pass a field sobriety test and probably should not have driven home. As such, the weight of the evidence compels the conclusion that Renfroe was driving impaired in a NALC vehicle. This again brings us to the question of whether or not such conduct constitutes neglect of duty or a violation of the Constitution as contemplated by Article 10. NALC has relevant policy titled NALC Owned Vehicle Use Policy found on pages 63 and 64 of Joint Exhibit 1. It provides in pertinent part, driving under the influence of drugs or alcohol is prohibited. Drivers must have a valid driver's license. The person assigned to the vehicle will not use or permit the use of vehicle in a negligent or improper manner or in violation of any law. All traffic violations and accidents, whether at fault or not, must be immediately reported to NALC Human Resources, and if applicable, a police report must be provided. It is worth mentioning here that no accident happened and that no person or property was harmed. Also, that NALC officers who are assigned to an NALC vehicle are required to maintain personal insurance to cover driving the vehicle during non-duty, non-business hours for personal use. Panel conclusions on Charge 3. Clearly, violations of this policy occurred in this case. As to failing to report, when the charging party pursued that at the hearing, Renfroe objected on the basis that the charge made no mention of that. Once again, the panel recessed the hearing in order to confer. We return with the following procedural ruling. Charge number 3 makes no specific mention of failure to report a traffic violation or arrest to NALC. We did not read the charge to incorporate failure to report. As such, as a matter of due process, it would be unfair to allow the charging party to prosecute this before us. As to the item, driver must have valid driver's license, this was not in the charge, nor did the charging party originally pursue it. In his investigation report, Weir dug into this sua sponte. The panel believes that he exceeded his province doing so. That said, during his testimony and under questioning from the panel, Renfroe admitted that his license was suspended for a period of time and he drove the NALC vehicle occasionally during that period. Renfroe did, however, violate the provision in the policy that prohibits driving under the influence of alcohol, and he used the vehicle in a negligent or improper manner and in violation of the law. The panel also believes more generally that when officers violate the law in a manner that has a nexus to their NALC employment and duties, this can be interpreted as neglect of duty. That was the case here. In addition, the oath the NALC officers take includes a promise and assurances they will guard all properly placed in my charge. Now this matter occurred in 2018. So, for any trained NALC representative, the question of timeliness would come into mind. We know that timeliness is one of the defenses to discipline, and our procedural ruling precludes Renfroe from being convicted on a charge of failing to report. However, it is undisputed that Renfroe did not report the incident officially or otherwise. Indeed, Fred Rolando, who was NALC president at the time, testified that he was unaware, and so the failure to report is a consideration on the timeliness question. No one but Renfroe knew about this until Brother Jackson came upon it during his preparation of the charges, so it could not have been acted upon sooner. Therefore, there is no equitable estoppel into play here. Accordingly, the panel recommends to the Executive Council that President Renfroe be found guilty of this charge. Charge 4, abandoned position and dereliction, neglect of duty. It is undisputed that President Renfroe was scheduled to attend the 2023 regional training sessions in Regions 1, 11, and 14, that his attendance was announced, and that significant period of time was set aside for him to speak to the attendees at each of these sessions. It is also undisputed that Renfroe was a no-show at each of these events. Further, to the fact that the national business agent of these regions, who are responsible for running the sessions, were given only last-minute notice of Renfroe's failure to appear, Renfroe also admitted to using lies, misinformation, and deceptions in his communications to the national business agents and to other leaders about this. The charging party, Brother Jackson, prevented a number of witnesses, including Region 1 National Business Agent Keisha Lewis, to testify about the impact this all had on their region. Lewis testified about the difficulty of last-minute scrambling around to fill in the time which had been allotted for Renfroe. She and other witnesses testified about their disappointment and that of the attendees in not having their expectations of hearing from and interacting with the national president met, about the embarrassment and injury to NALC reputation, especially amongst first-time attendees. They also pointed to the waste of branch financial resources occurred due to the branches sending more members to the training than they otherwise would have with the announcement that the national president would be there. In his defense, Renfroe again points to the behaviors that are common amongst individuals suffering from the disease of alcoholism, including lying to and deceiving themselves and others. He maintains that at the time his condition had developed into a physical addiction to alcohol which exacerbated other related infirmities, and that this left him physically unable to attend and perform at these sessions, and so his absence was not a choice. He drew an analogy that this has been caused by another disease like cancer, for example, it would have been understood and forgiven. He testified that he has attended numerous regional trainings and other events in the field, and that this is one of his favorite duties. Renfroe's presentation on this charge is in large part a mea culpa which acknowledged most of this. Panel conclusion on Charge 4. First, the panel recommends that the Executive Council set aside the element of the charge abandonment of position. The circumstances here do not meet the commonly understood definitions and use of the term in employment settings, which is when employees do not report for work as scheduled and have no intention of returning to their job but do not notify the employer of their intention to quit. Turning to whether Renfroe's conduct was neglected duties contemplated by Article 10, 2 members of this panel were national business agents and one was a regional administrative assistant. And so, we understand very well the gravity and impact of the national president failing to fulfill their commitment to attend a regional training. We would be in a position to take judicial notice of this even in the absence of the undisputed evidence which was presented to us at the hearing. This is grave, and in our judgment, a neglect of duty. There is no evidence refuting Renfroe's claim that he was physically unable to attend the regional training sessions, so arguably he should not be punished for his absence. We have previously alluded to lies, misinformation, and deceptions being common behaviors associated with alcoholism. In this instant, Renfroe's lies and deceptions led to last-minute notice that he would not be at the sessions. We have also noted that in employment matters, alcoholics are not absolved or extricated from misconduct just because it flowed through their alcoholism. The leaders and attendees at these regional trainings had a right to expect and receive reasonable advance notice. On a matter of this magnitude, Renfroe must be held accountable for the severe impositions this lack of reasonable advance notice caused. Accordingly, it is the recommendation of the panel that the Executive Council find Renfroe guilty of the charge. Panel recommendations to Executive Council on consequences. As to the consequences related to a guilty finding of charges number 3 and 4, it is commonly understood and accepted that misconduct caused by or related to alcoholism is not required to be expunged, erased, or excused by an employer for that reason. This is so even under the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA, it's the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights ADA paper. We also recognize that principle under Article 5 of the National Agreement, instead, any penalties for such conduct are entitled to consideration for mitigation. The panel believes there's another mitigating factor in play. Of course, ultimately, alcoholics are responsible for their own behavior and for getting the help they need. But it is commonly accepted that when individuals or organizations engage in enabling behavior, that can be a factor when considering mitigation of consequences. We believe the record is replete with instances of that. The record shows, and former President Rolando admitted in his testimony, that he was aware of a number of instances of alcohol-related misbehavior going back to as far as at least 2018. When questioned by the panel about how it was that this was not adequately addressed, given that Renfroe was being groomed to succeed him, he declared, "Perhaps I should have done more." This was true of a number of other officers and staff members who had red flags waving brightly in front of them, and we note that a number of current national officers who had seen enough to know or should have known that Renfroe's drinking was problematic ran with Renfroe on his slate in the last election of national officers. This is not meant to be a condemnation of any individuals. The absence of intervention with alcoholics is not uncommon for a myriad of reasons, but it is arguable that in some sense the organization failed him. With that premise in place, what should the consequences be here? The first obvious question is, do the charges Renfroe is found guilty of, either individually or collectively, warrant removal from office? The panel thinks not. Removal is the harshest measure available. We believe it should be reserved for the most serious offenses: fraud, theft, certain sexual misconduct, certain violations of law, etc. This is particularly so in light of the nature of national officer position. They gain it by virtue of election by the membership. The NALC and its members place great value on its democratic principles and processes. As such, the overturning of a decision by the membership to elect an officer should be rare and carefully and critically considered. If not removal, then what? What is an appropriate and fitting penalty for the type and manner of neglect of duty before us? One which is reasonably related and proportional to the offenses under these uncommon circumstances, and one which should not be perceived as a slap on the wrist or a sweeping under the rug. After much consideration and deliberation, the panel recommends that the Executive Council impose a formal written reprimand. Reprimand is defined as an expression of severe disapproval, especially in a formal statement, a public judgment involving condemnation. It produces a permanent stain on reputation and legacy. It is a factor which voters can consider if he seeks re-election. It effectuate the intent of this reprimand, we further recommend that the council have it promulgated within NALC by announcement in the postal record, NALC bulletin on the NALC website. The panel wishes to express our appreciation for the opportunity to contribute to the well-being of this beloved organization. Barry Weiner, Myra Warren, and Brian Hellman. And so that is the very long report. I got tired of reading that, but that is the very long report. And so you see kind of where the panel was leading. To me, it sounded like, of course, I don't like Renfroe, so I think they should have found him guilty on all of them. Because I went by the Weir report, I read it, I read the testimony that and the evidence that they had. And another thing that I probably do that's unfair to Renfroe is all the times that he was untruthful. And to me, as an advocate, when you go into arbitration, if the management's witness is untruthful, all of their testimony should be disallowed. It shouldn't be taken into consideration if they're going to testify in an arbitration and they're untruthful. I'll point that out in my closing. He lied here. I'm going to say that everything he said in here was a lie. And that's just how I am. That's as an advocate, that's how I am. In the Weir report, you saw that numerous times he said that Mr. Renfroe was untruthful. Mr. Valfietis said that was due to alcoholism. The Weir report was after that, was after he had gotten out of his treatment. He was allegedly sober during the Weir report, and he was continuously untruthful during that. Even in this hearing, he was untruthful. When he said that to that point at the hearing, Renfroe professed that while he admitted to consuming some alcohol at dinner that evening, he did not and still does not believe he was impaired. And so even at the hearing, now what he believes is impaired, maybe that's unfair for me. But even at that hearing, he said, I wasn't impaired. And they said, yeah, you were. This panel said, yeah, you were. Weir said, yeah, you were. The police said, yeah, you were. So even at the hearing, he was untruthful. And so the ADA and FMLA, like I said, were defenses that the panel brought in. And I know that Mr. Jackson and his counsel were highly upset at that because those were new arguments and that they have brought in. And they didn't allow some arguments that Mr. Jackson attempted to bring in. You saw that where he would bring stuff in. They would object, and they would have a little timeout, and they'd come back and say, we're not going to allow it in because it violates his due process. But we are going to interject arguments that they didn't make to help him. And I think that that was a point of contention with Mr. Jackson and his counsel. I'm going to read Mr. Jackson's rebuttal. Good God, 2 hours and 40 minutes. Son of a gun. This is only 9 pages, and then I'll be done, okay? So, report to the Executive Council, rebuttal to the Committee of 3. Introduction. Martin Luther King once said, any rules of justice will depend on the particular state or condition in which people find themselves. Unfortunately, today we find our union divided amongst ongoing controversies regarding collective bargaining, conduct of our national president, and ongoing issues with truthfulness and transparency of our national leadership. These are self-inflicted wounds and directly related to leadership failures. We are here today not because of the charging party, but because of the undisputed conduct and neglect of duty of Brian Renfroe. As the charging party, we find ourselves in a bit of a role reversal, acting as the agent of our employer, the membership of the National Association of Letter Carriers. Therefore, in this specific case, when we refer to the membership, it is intrinsically the same as referring to the employer. As such, the membership has the same rights as any other employer to establish policies that are applicable to all employees and ADA guidelines that allow employers to hold their employees to the same standards of conduct that are set for other employees. We concur with the prevailing sentiment of the national president is entitled to the same rights and responsibilities as a letter carrier. The NALC arbitration database establishes letter carriers for favorable consideration clause after rehabilitation in their contract only enjoy a 30% success rate for an alcoholism-based offense. We were all experienced officers of the union and are fully cognizant that no letter carrier would be let off with a mere letter of warning for similar offenses. There are several leadership failures that have led us to this point, but the decisions of past leaders are not at issue. It is the actions of President Renfroe, who is demanding the benefit of an alcoholism defense by insisting he not be held accountable for any acts of neglect, misconduct, and deceit, all characteristics which a reasonable person would believe makes him unfit for leadership. While it may be true some of the acts were performed while under the influence, the Weir report and the findings of the committee did not discover any evidence that every act of neglect of duty or deceit was performed while in a drunken state. While rehabilitation may grant some favorable consideration for those acts committed while under the influence, those acts done while sober are subject to the same standards of conduct as any other letter carrier. As agents of the membership, we will show that the committee made errors in judgment and omitted relevant evidence established within the Weir report and testimony at the hearing. The committee committed to following the guidelines normally respected at arbitration. However, there is one glaring omission, which is that of the dissenting committee member. The committee chair simply paraphrased and even mocked the dissenter's alleged view. Normally, on a tri-panel arbitration proceeding, the dissenter's views are published and each panel member signs off they concur or dissent with the majority opinion. This omission deprives the Executive Council of the benefit of diverse reasoning associated with the charges and penalty. It is also an inference of the committee's chair's bias. Charge number 1, neglect of duty. As it pertains to charge number 1, the committee committed the following errors in judgment and omitted several facts from consideration. With respect to the preliminary matter addressed by the committee, President Renfroe's defense that he cannot be charged with anything except neglect of duty is a farcical splitting of ends. As arguendo would have, there's nothing in the Constitution that specifically establishes a duty not to steal. So does that give the president license to steal? Of course not. Such acts of misconduct are implied by law to be a neglect of duty, whether specifically cited or not. Simple logic dictates that the committee erred in judgment when it agreed with President Renfroe's flawed defense. Regarding President Renfroe's neglect of duty prior to his rehabilitation, the president of the NALC is not omnipotent and is answerable to the Executive Council and membership. The NALC president is subject to the same standards to duty and accountability as a letter carrier. Article 9, Section 11.1 of the National Constitution places responsibility on the Executive Council to supervise the activities, affairs, and functioning of the Union. Under federal law, the President, like any other letter carrier, is required to request FMLA and or to request to be provided a reasonable accommodation under the ADA guidelines from his employer, i.e. the Executive Council. There is no evidence that President Renfroe requested FMLA or reasonable accommodation from his employer. Further, letter carriers are not granted FMLA retroactively, and the courts have ruled consistently that retroactive leniency is not a reasonable accommodation as defined by the ADA. The committee erred in judgment and exceeded its authority by granting retroactive FMLA protections that were not requested by President Renfroe. Such authority rests exclusively with the Executive Council. It is also true that the committee erred in judgment when it granted retroactive leniency for President Renfroe's neglect of duty prior to entering rehabilitation. The committee omitted the charging party's objections during the hearing regarding the appearance of bias concerning the chair's proffering an ADA and FMLA defense for the accused. The objections are significant because the committee's report infers that both parties were in acceptance of the rulings and determinations. While the committee chair is a polished wordsmith, it is inaccurate to say both parties agreed with his findings regarding ADA and FMLA. The committee erred in judgment when it used flawed reasoning to grant FMLA retroactively and ADA considerations not requested by President Renfroe as a technique to avoid a penalty for his neglect of duty prior to his rehabilitation. We would therefore request that the committee recommendation be set aside and the Executive Council consider an appropriate remedy. The next component. The committee erred in judgment and acted inconsistently with the national constitution when it replaced the Executive Council's supervisory authority with that of the President's Chief of Staff, who is not a letter carrier or an elected officer, and was a center of controversy within Charge 2. She is the President's at-will employer and has no administrative authority within the national constitution. As arguendo would have it, even if what she says is true about her claim that President Renfroe reported to her every day, there is nothing in the record to reflect that she kept the Executive Council or the economic bargaining team informed. The committee erred in judgment when it accepted Renfroe's claim that the President has no reporting authority. The committee has no authority to amend or modify the national constitution by disregarding the Executive Council's obligation to supervise the activities, affairs, and function of the Union. Therefore, the committee conclusion that the President has no reporting authority should be set aside. Next component of charge number 1. President Renfroe's continual absence and no-shows during a critical time of negotiations. The committee erred in judgment when it determined the burden of proof wasn't met. Their summation of this component of charge number 1 is analogous to saying, no big deal, the letter carrier was absent and the route eventually got delivered anyway. Letter carriers are not afforded such a defense, and neither should the national president of the union. There is no dispute that bargaining on the economic package was late starting, not until April 2023. There is no dispute that the bargaining team of Executive VP Barner and former President Orlando had to start from scratch. It is undisputed that former President Orlando had concerns that USPS lead negotiator Tolino would use the late start as a procedural argument against the union in interest arbitration. The calculus behind negotiations isn't always the results of when the contract is ratified. It is the appearance that the union was prepared to be in the fight. Just because the last few contracts took months past the termination of the agreement does not mean that the membership expectations for a timely resolution are misplaced. While the average letter carrier doesn't negotiate a national agreement for 270,000 active letter carriers, they are expected to fulfill their duties, and so is President Renfroe. With this particular set of circumstances, we ask that committee's recommendation be set aside and that President Renfroe be found guilty and removed from office. Charge number 2, circulating false and misleading statements about NALC officer. Sharing, referencing confidential information about employee matter. As a preliminary matter, the committee made an error in judgment when it assumed this charge was filed on behalf of Brother Henry. This charge was filed on behalf of the membership as a means of halting the spread of vicious and salacious rumors against any officer of the NALC. The majority of the committee erred in judgment when it determined that President Renfroe did not intend to spread vicious and salacious rumors about Vice President Henry. Intent means rea, goes to the state of mind of the perpetrator at the time when the event occurred. Since there is no way to crawl inside someone's mind, intent is therefore established by inference. Chiefly, one must ask, why would President Renfroe call so many people allegedly for advice? Here's why. The committee report in this matter omitted the testimony of 2 of the President Renfroe's staffers who made the claims. First, the chief of staff claimed she was on tour in the Marietta facility with approximately 26 others in the hallway when she felt her rear end being grazed. The second staffer claimed she was at the end of the line for lunch when VP Henry came up from behind her and stood too close. Both women allegedly took their complaint to President Renfroe and did not file a complaint with HR. At Brother Henry's insistence, EVP Barner referred to the matter to HR, who investigated and determined the evidence to be inconclusive. Based on all the evidence, neither claim establishes anything other than perception based on what can be described as benign incidental contact. President Renfroe never gave a reasonable explanation of why he needed advice from a minimum of 7 different people for such a benign incident instead of just turning the matter over to HR. President Renfroe never offered an explanation why he didn't seek VP Henry's side of the story before he sought advice from others. While all denied spreading the rumor, it is obvious that someone talked, and President Renfroe told more than 7 people. It's more than likely more than one or even all talked because it's just human nature to spread salacious gossip. It is important to note that all those who approached VP Henry about the rumors were NALC members and branch officers from around the county. A non-letter carrier chief of staff is unlikely to have NALC contacts sufficient to spread rumors, and it is just as unlikely that the other member of President Renfroe's staff had the ability to circulate the rumors nationwide. Neither staff admitted to circulating the rumors, so the only remaining possibility came from President Renfroe. The fact that 3 testified they were contacted by the president claimed that the incident, as described by Renfroe, was groping, grabbing, rubbing ass. Their testimony established that the story was unnecessarily embellished. There is only one plausible explanation for embellishing the incident, and that was to inflict harm on VP Henry. The only possible explanation for talking to so many over incidental contact is to ensure the rumors would spread. It is simply not reasonable to believe that President Renfroe needed advice from others over a benign incident when he didn't even have VP Henry's side of the story. Every executive council member is aware of the NALC's policy on sexual harassment. There is no reasonable, plausible explanation for not turning the matter over to the NALC HR professional to investigate the matter unless the intent was to spread salacious rumors about VP Henry. The preponderance of evidence established the majority committee findings regarding the issues were in error in judgment. The majority committee omissions appear to be a willful act of ignorance. The fact the majority paraphrased the dissenting opinion and withheld it from the report establishes a bias. Charge 3, impaired driving after hours in an NALC vehicle. The facts are not in dispute. Brian Renfroe drove an NALC staff car while impaired and was arrested. He hid this fact from his employer, the NALC. When discovered, he lied and told the executive council it didn't happen, even in the face of irrefutable evidence. This act of deceit established a consciousness of guilt which occurred while Renfroe was sober. The fact that Renfroe never came clean weighs any consideration of mitigation for an offense for which a letter carrier would face the most severe form of discipline. Ironically, the fact that Renfroe concealed the arrest for over 6 years and carried out his normal duties nullifies any requirement for the NLC to grant retroactive ADA protection for his dereliction of duty. It is beyond reasoning to believe that a letter carrier would receive only a letter of warnings for similar conduct, which is analogous to the penalty suggested by the committee. Therefore, we ask that the Executive Council set aside the penalty recommended by the committee and remove President Renfroe from office. Charge 4, abandoned position and dereliction, neglect of duty. The facts are undisputed. President Renfroe was scheduled to attend 3 regional training sessions and went MIA. The committee made an error in judgment when it recommended to set aside the abandonment charge. There is no dispute that President Renfroe stopped showing up for work prior to him entering a rehabilitation facility. President Renfroe admitted he was home drinking and suffering from the effects of his alcoholism. There is no specific period that one can miss work before one can be lawfully charged with abandon of position. Since there is no dispute over the facts and circumstances of this charge and its neglect of duty, this is a penalty issue. Letter carriers is subject to the discipline and discharge for failing to report as scheduled. The fact that the route got delivered anyway or the training session proceeded without him is irrelevant. Given the circumstances and out-of-pocket expenses incurred by branches and individual members sent to hear the president, they deserve equivalent reciprocity. Therefore, we ask that the Executive Council impose a more fitting penalty than a meager censure. In closing, as it pertains to the penalty recommended in this case, the committee has been inconsistent by granting Renfroe the same rights as a letter carrier when it favors him, and then granting him special status as NALC president when being a letter carrier does not. Such natural biases are common to a social group such as police officers and former and current national officers. We understand the pressure is great. Many Executive Council members have been visited and asked where they stood. We ask you to stand with the membership and to be the leaders you were elected to be. You must remove a president who lost his moral compass to lead. The word tells us, without wise leadership, a nation falls. Proverbs 11:14. We pray that the Executive Council acts as wise leaders and brings justice to the membership and ends this controversy. And so there you have it. There's the panel report and the rebuttal report by Mr. Jackson. So y'all have heard the Weir report, the panel report, and the rebuttal. It's all over with. We'll be going to national, and I'm sure somebody will bring up the charges, wanting to reintroduce the charges. And y'all know how I feel. I think Renfroe should have been removed. I think the panel was biased, and I just do. I read the Weir report a lot. I've had this for several weeks. Now, it's funny. Somebody on Reddit said that I wasn't being transparent, and I'm just like everybody else because I had this report for weeks and didn't read it, and they really took exception to it. All I have is my name. That's all I've got. And if somebody sends me something and they say, hey, look, we're going to send you something, but hold off reading it, okay? Hold off reading this thing. That's exactly what I'm going to do. Even if I think y'all should hear it, I'm going to hold off because all I have is my name. If I was to take that and read it, do y'all know what y'all would be getting from now on? Nothing. Do you know what I would be getting from now on? Nothing. They have to be able to trust me that I'm going to do what they ask. And then that way, y'all will hear things like the Weir report. We had a gentleman that so thought y'all shouldn't have heard the Weir report that they brought it to the Executive Council that the person who disseminated the Weir report should be under investigation because y'all had it. You heard the business agent saying that Weir report was put out to put pressure on the Executive Council. That's how much they didn't want y'all to have the Weir report, for y'all to hear this man's findings. They're willing to put this man under investigation who disseminated the report. And he asked me if I would represent him, if I'd be one of the ones that would represent him. And I said, absolutely. Of course, that got shot down. They're not going to investigate him. But that's how much they didn't want y'all to hear the Weir report. For y'all to see what kind of a piece of shit we have as a president, the lying piece of shit we have as a president, and still lie to the council, to the panel of three. I think he's the most dishonest human being I've ever met, and he still is. I think that the committee's report was biased. I think that they omitted things intentionally, and that's just my feeling. You heard the rebuttal. And so... but y'all make y'all's own determination, whatever y'all think, you know. Y'all heard it all. We'll be in Boston. I'm sure that it will be appealed to Boston, and make sure y'all stick around, and we'll see. And but that's that. 3 hours of a damn episode. It is now 10:30 my time. 3 hours. I got to edit this, which means I've got to listen to 3 hours and edit some things out, because when I look at screenshots, there's minutes go by while I'm looking for screenshots, so I got to go back and edit all that stuff out. And so anyway, there you have it, 3 hours of episode. All right. Hey, I love each and every one of you, man, and I'm not going to stop until every member of this union loves y'all like I do. I will not stop going after the establishment. If it's only me doing it every week, then I will go after the establishment every damn week. And y'all maybe get tired of it. I may lose a lot of listeners. I'm sure that I've infuriated a lot of people today. And my ass is always available to kiss. Okay? It's readily available for y'all to kiss all of it who don't like that. All right? I know that there are people in the Executive Council that despise me. Again, the offer always stands to kiss the entirety of this ass. Okay? I will not stop until my union fights for y'all like they do this piece of shit president. If they would fight for y'all like they do this sack of shit we have as a president, man, we'd be in good shape. But they don't. They don't. They have checked out. We've got a workforce that is tired as hell. It is overworked. We are drastically underpaid. We are overworked and drastically underpaid, and we're mad as hell. And we're getting no help from our leaders, right? So I will continue to carry the fight to them bastards until we can get them out of there. And that's just what I'm going to do, all right? Y'all have a fantastic rest of the week. I love each and every one of you. It's going to be hot as hell this next week, all right? Take breaks as needed in this heat. Protect yourselves. Get with your CCAs. Make sure they're getting those coolers, drinks, and things like that, towels, heads getting covered, and do all those things and protect them. Protect them. Management's coming after us. I know it with these stationary events, especially in this heat, all right? Y'all take care, and I'll see you next Sunday with Mr. Mike Caref. Bye.